Welcome. Settle in, wherever you are, and take a long, slow breath. Notice the rhythm of your heart. Let your shoulders drop, and for a moment, let the world be soft around you. You've found a gentle place, a pause, a hush, a sanctuary in the noise. Today, you are surrounded by a community of fellow travelers, each on their own journey through this strange, shimmering reality. Maybe you're listening with a cup of tea, curled up under a blanket, or walking beneath the open sky. However you've arrived, you are welcome here. Before us stretches a question as old as consciousness itself. Have you ever felt the weight of uncertainty pressing on your chest, as if every crossroad in your life leads you not forward, but deeper into a maze? Perhaps you find yourself replaying the smallest moments, a single word, a choice you made years ago, wondering why even the best decisions often taste bittersweet. What if you could hold every possible outcome in your hands, see every path, and step freely without looking back? Does that freedom actually exist? Or is it only an illusion stitched into the fabric of your mind by a universe that loves paradoxes? Tonight, we gently turn our attention toward the strange landscape of indecision and regret through the lens of quantum possibility. You don't need to strain or focus too hard. Just let your mind drift with me. There's no exam at the end, no need to remember every idea. This journey is simply for you, to inspire, to soothe, to awaken a gentle sense of awe and curiosity. It's okay if some concepts are slippery or strange. Sometimes the best way to meet the universe is by letting its questions wash over you, trusting that something will settle softly in your soul. All through history, people have yearned to understand why it is so hard to decide. Why does certainty shimmer, always out of reach? Why do we carry regret, even when the outcome is good? Quantum physics tells us that, at the smallest scale, reality is not a set of fixed facts. It's a flickering sea of possibility, a dance of outcomes that only become real when observed. But what if this isn't just science? What if your mind, your emotions, your patterns of indecision are playing by these same mysterious rules? Here, in this gentle hour, we will explore the art of making choices without regret, guided by something called the quantum delayed choice switch. This isn't a cold theory, but a living invitation to step beyond the old stories about decision and doubt. There are no demands here, only gentle curiosity, as we follow a trail of paradoxes that might just change how you see yourself and your place in the universe. Where are you tuning in from? Tonight or today? How does your breath feel in your body right now? If you want, share your feelings, your questions, your wonderings in the comments below. This is a place where every perspective is welcome, where each listener brings their own shade of meaning to the conversation. Over the next few hours, we will unravel 30 paradoxes, 30 razor-sharp riddles that have the power to upend your assumptions about life, choice, and self. You'll hear questions that don't comfort, that pierce routine and break open stale ways of thinking. You'll find mental cliffs and contradictions, places where logic seems to tangle and reality blurs. Don't rush. Let the questions hang in the air. Let your mind feel the thrill of not knowing, and maybe, just maybe, allow something softer, truer to emerge beneath the tension. Tonight is not about finding the final answer. It's about learning to breathe in the presence of the impossible, to feel at home inside the unsolvable, and to sense, however faintly, that maybe you are already free, even in the midst of all your uncertainty. Now let's begin. Let's wander together into the paradox, where regret and indecision reveal their secret faces, and the quantum world meets the longing heart. How is your heart tonight? Perhaps you're tuning in from your favorite chair, or listening quietly as the city settles around you. Maybe the weight of the day lingers, or your mind is already stretching out, ready to wander through unfamiliar territory. Whatever the case, tonight is not about being perfect or productive. Tonight is about exploring, safely, the mysteries that flicker behind your eyes when the lights are low and the noise of the world falls away. Here, we blend the art of personal growth with the vastness of the quantum universe, a place where the smallest motions ripple through everything and every thought contains galaxies of possibility. In this space, you're invited to notice without judgment, to question without needing to answer, to reflect without fear. Let the words meet you where you are. You are encouraged to rest, to wonder, and to know that you don't need to figure it all out right now. This isn't a test, and there's nothing to memorize. There's only curiosity, gently blooming, patiently waiting. Our focus tonight is a curious puzzle. The midnight loop, that familiar pattern when darkness falls and your mind becomes a hall of infinite mirrors. Perhaps you know the sensation well. The urge to solve, to fix, to control every stray thought as it spins, gleaming, across the surface of your mind. Maybe you feel yourself tracing the same lines, again and again, searching for an exit that never quite appears. Sleep hovers just beyond reach, a promise that always dissolves when you get close. But beneath this everyday struggle lies a question, a disturbance, a glitch in reality so subtle and so strange it almost goes unnoticed. Every night, as you close your eyes and hope for peace, your mind transforms. It becomes an infinite mirror. You look and look, seeking your own reflection. But what if it isn't you in the glass at all? What if something else is watching, waiting, just beyond the shimmer of your awareness? Tonight, together, we enter the machine. Not to fix, not to win, but to witness. You will see what's been watching you. You will discover the patterns that have shaped your nights and frozen your progress. This is not a journey of comfort. It is not a soothing story. It is an honest, unblinking exploration of the questions that haunt you when the world is quietest. This series is for anyone who has ever found themselves awake long after the world should be asleep. For those whose thoughts multiply in the darkness, who long to find the pause button on a brain that refuses to slow down. Here, we use the strangeness of the quantum world as both metaphor and map. We'll uncover the subtle traps that keep you circling the same questions, the paradoxes that freeze progress, and the mysteries that linger at the edges of sleep. You'll discover how your most familiar tools, your intelligence, your focus, your deep desire to find answers, can transform, in the dark, into the very things that hold you captive. We'll explore how overthinking mirrors the infamous quantum Zeno effect, a bizarre law from the smallest scales of reality. The more you watch, the more you freeze, until motion itself is locked in place. In this quantum prison, progress stalls. Relief hovers just out of reach. It isn't comfort you'll find here, but the raw, electric charge of genuine curiosity. Each chapter is built on questions that unsettle, not on answers that reassure. You will face the midnight contradictions. The harder you try to sleep, the further sleep runs. The more you focus, the less you achieve. Every solution births another problem. Every reflection multiplies into new distortions. The brain, like the quantum world, is full of paradoxes that don't resolve but instead deepen, revealing new layers of strangeness. You're not expected to agree or disagree, only to witness and wonder. You may find that the greatest growth happens not in moments of certainty, but in the open spaces where questions remain unanswered. Here, you'll be offered no tidy bows, no final truths, no comforting closure. Instead, you'll receive the gift of unfiltered reality. Unresolved, unfinished, alive. Throughout this series, you'll be invited to question the very nature of your own mind. Who appointed you judge and jury of your thoughts? Why does wanting peace sometimes breed chaos? How do familiar fears return, night after night, dressed in new disguises? You'll confront the endless calculations, the echoing voids, the dreams that fracture at your touch. You'll learn to see your own thought patterns as quantum puzzles. Mysterious, looping, sometimes beautiful, always strange. And always you'll be reminded. This space is for you. There are no right answers here, no deadlines, no pressure to become someone different. You are allowed to be curious, to let go, to wonder and wander in safety. Every question you encounter is an invitation, not a demand. Every paradox is a door, not a wall. So, how are you feeling right now? Where are you listening from, and what does your own midnight loop feel like? As we begin, know that you are not alone in these questions. All around the world, minds are spinning, searching, yearning for rest. You are part of something ancient and universal. A web of dreamers and thinkers, awake together beneath the quiet sky. Let yourself be carried, gently, into the heart of the puzzle. Tonight, the infinite mirror waits. Your mind, your questions, your paradoxes, they all belong here. Welcome to the midnight loop. The pause button remains elusive, but together, we will see what happens when you finally stop searching for it. Tonight, every word is for your relaxation, inspiration, and personal development. You can listen without worry, breathe without hurry, and know that whatever you discover is enough. The mysteries of the mind are vast, the universe even more so. But here, in this quiet place, you are safe to question, to reflect, to be. As we enter this first chapter, a deeper disturbance stirs. Every night, your mind becomes an infinite mirror. But what if it isn't reflecting you at all? The machine is waiting. Next, we step into the questions that hold you captive and the unseen laws that bind your mind when sleep runs thin. If all paths are chosen, why does every road feel like the wrong one? Pause for a moment and sense the hidden tremor that moves beneath your every choice. Picture yourself at the crossroads. Morning sunlight on your face, the world unfolding in infinite directions. Logic lines up its arguments. Your heart pulses with possibilities. But something ancient and silent presses at the edges. An unshakable sense that, no matter what you do, something essential slips away the instant you move forward. This is the paradox that cradles every moment of decision. With every step you take, an infinity of other steps vanish. In the act of choosing, you become haunted by the lives you never lived, the paths you never wandered, the stories you never allowed to unfold. The world is thick with possibility, and yet, as soon as you move, every branch but one is pruned away. So why does even the right decision taste of loss? Regret is not a simple error to be corrected or a flaw to be erased. It is a shadow stitched into consciousness, an echo of the quantum nature of the universe. At the smallest scales, physicists found something unsettling. The electron, the photon, the tiniest quanta, they do not settle into one path until they are watched. Before the moment of observation, every possibility is alive. Reality itself is built from uncertainty and potential. Now, carry this idea into the realm of your own mind. Every time you make a choice, your thoughts branch like a quantum wave, exploring every possible outcome, every consequence, every secret wish. Even when the result is good, even when your mind whispers, "You did well," a subtle grief lingers for all that could have been, a celebration and a funeral in the same breath. Perhaps you notice this most clearly at night, when the world quiets and the memory of your choices stirs beneath the surface. Why did I say that? Why didn't I take the other path? Even when things work out, the mind reaches for the roads not taken, the alternate realities forever closed. Is it just nostalgia? Or is there something deeper at play? The human heart is built for longing. Some traditions say that suffering comes from attachment, from clinging too tightly to what is and to what might have been. But what if regret is more than simple sorrow? What if it is a map, a clue that points to the deeper, hidden rules of the universe? Consider this. In the laboratory, scientists found that a single particle can travel all paths at once, until observed. This isn't a metaphor, but a real, measured fact. Reality splits, and only the act of looking forces it to choose. Could your regret, your uncertainty, be a reflection of this quantum truth? Are you grieving the collapse of your own infinite potential each time you make a decision? Let yourself feel the texture of this question. It is not meant to comfort. It is not here to soothe you into forgetting. It is a sharp prod, a point of entry. What if every decision you make is right and wrong, a blessing and a loss all at once? What if this ache is the price of being alive in a universe woven from probability and paradox? This is the paradox we explore tonight, not to resolve, but to invite. Not to answer, but to feel, as you rest here in the quiet. In a world where all roads shimmer before you, why does every path feel shadowed by what you've left behind? Is this regret, or is it the pulse of quantum potential, beating in the chambers of your heart? So linger with this discomfort. Notice the ways it pulses through your memories, your plans, your hopes for the future. Let the question deepen. Let it disturb the surface. If all paths are chosen, why does every road feel like the wrong one? There are no platitudes here, no easy solutions. Just a slow unfolding, a gentle willingness to rest in the unresolved. This is where the real journey begins. Now, having sensed the ache beneath every decision, we move toward a new tension, a new puzzle. If regret grows so easily, is it possible that doubt itself is not just an accident, but a hidden act of self-destruction? Next, we will unravel the true cost of uncertainty, and why you might be clinging to doubt even when it drains you. After glimpsing the hidden cost of regret, what if your uncertainty is an addiction, one you never chose? Let the question settle deep. If regret has a cost, who pays the price? Beneath the skin of indecision, a quieter crisis unfolds. One so familiar, so camouflaged, that it slips through the cracks of daily awareness. Doubt, that soft, persistent voice that circles every thought, picks at every memory, waits at the edge of every plan. It's easy to mistake it for wisdom. Doubt masquerades as caution, disguises itself as prudence, wears the costume of maturity. But there is a secret underneath. When you peel away the surface, you discover something more dangerous. A silent drain, a leech at the core of the self. Pause and sense the subtle erosion. How much energy is spent replaying conversations in your head? How many days spiral away in hesitation, the mind running endless loops? It's not just the major crossroads that become traps. Even the smallest decisions, a text left unanswered, a meeting you dread, the fork in the grocery aisle, leave behind an invisible residue. Every moment of hesitation siphons a little more vitality, a little more clarity, a little more trust in yourself. This is not a flaw in your character. It's a hidden program, running quietly below the threshold of consciousness. Doubt is not random. It has its own intelligence, its own survival strategy. In some ways, it keeps you safe, alert to danger, open to alternatives. But too often, it oversteps. The same system that was meant to protect becomes a saboteur, hollowing out resolve from within. Ask yourself, when did doubt first begin to overstay its welcome? Was there a moment, a betrayal, a mistake, a shame, when uncertainty took root and never quite let go? Or has it always been there, seated in your childhood, cultivated by the world's endless warnings and comparisons? You're told to think things through, to weigh every option, to never be hasty. Caution becomes a creed, and doubt, an old friend who never leaves. Yet doubt rarely arrives alone. It brings with it an unspoken addiction, the strange relief of postponing risk. There's a comfort in hovering, in not deciding, in keeping every exit open. As long as no choice is made, no mistake can be confirmed, no blame assigned. The pain is numbed, spread thin, but never released. Life becomes an endless rehearsal, never a performance. What if this habit is not entirely yours? What if uncertainty is an addiction programmed by a society terrified of failure? You're taught that one wrong turn could cost everything. Careers, relationships, identity itself, always on the verge of being lost to a single misstep. No wonder doubt feels so natural. No wonder the idea of certainty seems almost dangerous. But here is the hidden cost. Every moment spent circling the drain of indecision is a moment stolen from living. The energy required to maintain constant vigilance leaves you too tired to act, too drained to pursue what you really want. Even joy is dulled, suffocated by 1,000 second guesses. The world grows gray and brittle. The self, divided, forgets what it truly desires. Consider the landscape of your days. How many small choices remain unresolved, accumulating like dust? How often do you find yourself trapped between options, paralyzed by the possibility of regret? It's a strange kind of pain, the pain of never quite arriving. You become a ghost in your own life, haunting the edges of action, never quite stepping into the center. Some would say that doubt is a sign of intelligence, a necessary pause before action. There's truth there, but left unchecked, doubt becomes a poison, corroding the wellspring of confidence. The line between healthy skepticism and self-destruction is razor thin, easy to cross and difficult to notice. When every action is shadowed by the possibility of failure, When every desire is muted by anxiety, something precious is lost. The ability to move freely, to trust the pulse of intuition, to act with courage. These are eroded by the relentless acid of uncertainty. Now ask, who benefits from your doubt? Is there a part of you, hidden and wounded, that clings to indecision as a shield? Does uncertainty feel safer than commitment? Is it easier to remain in limbo than to risk the heartbreak of being wrong? The addiction is subtle but real. The mind learns to prefer the discomfort it knows over the unknown pain of choosing. To hesitate is to feel powerful for a moment, as if by waiting you could avoid suffering altogether. But the universe cares little for hesitation. Time rolls on, indifferent. Decisions unmade become decisions by default. Opportunities vanish, relationships cool, creativity stagnates. The cost compounds silently, day after day, until suddenly the drain is undeniable. There's another dimension to this addiction, one that echoes the strange logic of quantum reality. The universe, at its deepest level, avoids certainty until the last possible moment. It explores every path, every outcome, until the observer intervenes. Your mind mimics this, hoping to keep every future alive, to avoid the collapse into one reality. But the longer you wait, the more possibilities wither. The world does not pause for your comfort. Somewhere inside, you sense the waste, the knowledge that indecision has stolen something irreplaceable. Joy in the present, trust in your own power, the ability to surrender, to leap, to feel the thrill of being fully alive. Doubt, left unchecked, is not just a hesitation. It is a subtle form of self-destruction, a way of slowly disappearing from your own life. Now you have glimpsed the cost. You have tasted the bitterness of regret and the slow erosion of doubt. The question presses closer. Is it possible that you are not simply a victim of your own uncertainty, but that you secretly crave it? Has indecision become a comfort, a familiar wound that you nurse for reasons you barely understand? The journey does not end with the recognition of pain. The path twists, revealing another contradiction. If you know your patterns, if you see the ways you sabotage yourself, why do you still choose what hurts you? Next, we will probe the riddle at the heart of all self-sabotage. If you're aware of your patterns, why do you sabotage the very things you crave? If you're aware of your patterns, why do you sabotage the very things you crave? There is a peculiar ache that comes not from ignorance, but from clarity. You see yourself clearly. You watch your thoughts. You notice the small betrayals, the promises broken, the dreams postponed, the sudden urge to retreat just as victory approaches. It would seem that awareness is enough to break the spell. After all, to recognize the loop should be to escape it. But something stranger is at work. Awareness alone does not free you. The truth is almost cruel in its simplicity. Even when you know the shape of your desires, when you map your own sabotage in perfect detail, you still find yourself acting against what you want most. You crave connection, yet withdraw. You long for adventure, yet choose comfort. The moment you near the thing you love, hesitation twists the outcome. Why? Listen to the hum of your thoughts. There's a script running, one you did not write. Call it autopilot or conditioning, or the sum of every lesson you've ever learned about danger and reward. It whispers that safety lies in avoidance, that to want is to risk heartbreak, that desire itself is a threat to the delicate equilibrium of your life. You notice yourself reaching for change, only to recoil at the edge. The body tenses, the breath shortens. 1,000 reasons to delay flood the mind. The sabotage is automatic, almost graceful in its efficiency. No conscious choice is made. The system reroutes before you can protest. This is the tyranny of the unconscious, the vast machinery of habit and fear, running beneath your intentions. Years of repetition carve deep ruts in the brain. The path of least resistance becomes a prison, paved by every previous hesitation. Even as you yearn for something different, your autopilot pulls you back to the known. There is a paradox in this. The more aware you become, the more painful the sabotage feels. The gap between desire and action widens. You know what you want, you see the way forward, but your feet refuse to move. Frustration grows. Self-judgment creeps in. Why do you betray yourself again and again? Look closer. Self-sabotage is not simply a weakness. It is a form of intelligence, an ancient survival strategy designed to keep you safe from disappointment. Somewhere in your history, you learned that to reach for what you want is dangerous. Desire was met with loss, hope with ridicule, love with abandonment. The lesson sinks in: to want is to hurt, to crave is to invite disaster. The safest route is retreat. But the system does not update automatically. Even when the danger has passed, the reflex remains. The body tenses at the threshold of change. The mind invents stories to justify withdrawal. Sabotage becomes a habit, a dance learned so well that you forget you're even moving. Awareness shines a light on the process, but does not dissolve it. You watch yourself hesitate, retreat, sabotage. The pain is doubled. Not only do you miss what you want, but you suffer the knowledge that you are the cause. The inner critic grows louder. Why can't you just do what you know is right? Yet beneath the judgment, something else waits. A deeper intelligence, a fierce longing for wholeness. The sabotage is not a defect, but a signal. It is the part of you that remembers pain, that aches to protect, that fears annihilation more than regret. To move forward, you must meet this intelligence with compassion, not contempt. But there is another twist, another paradox. The autopilot lies, but it lies convincingly. It tells you that hesitation is rational, that you are being sensible, that your dreams are unrealistic. The sabotage is disguised as logic, as maturity, as wisdom. You become trapped in a labyrinth of self-justification, circling endlessly, never quite escaping the gravity of your own patterns. There is a bitter comfort in the familiar. Even as you long for change, the mind clings to what it knows. Sabotage becomes a shelter, a way to avoid the risk of real transformation. The price is steep. The life you want drifts further away, each moment of hesitation driving it deeper into the realm of the impossible. Yet here, too, is a strange hope. To see the sabotage is to begin to loosen its grip. Awareness, though painful, cracks the shell. The pattern is revealed, and in that revelation, a new kind of choice becomes possible. Not the impulsive leap, but the gentle turning toward what you truly want, even in the face of fear. Listen to the tension. You crave, you sabotage, you watch yourself do it. The cycle continues, unless interrupted. The paradox remains unresolved. If you're aware of your patterns, why do you sabotage the very things you crave? Let this riddle linger, sharp and unresolved. There is no comfort here, only the invitation to stay awake, to keep watching, to honor the part of you that fears as fiercely as it hopes. Now, after confronting the machinery of self-sabotage, the journey takes a quantum turn. Next, we will step into a world where choices themselves do not exist until observed, a crossroads where your mind and the universe are locked in a dance. If every decision is alive until it's observed, then who's really in control, your mind or the universe? If every decision is alive until it's observed, then who's really in control, your mind or the universe? Picture the crossroads not just as a metaphor, but as a living reality. Each choice hums, vibrates, waiting to be made. Yet, in the strangeness of the quantum world, there's a riddle that refuses to settle. Before a particle's path is seen, it travels all possible routes at once. Reality does not select its shape until the moment it is watched. The universe, vast and unfathomable, seems to suspend its decision, keeping every outcome in reserve. Only the act of observation, the focus of awareness, collapses possibility into certainty. Now shift your attention inward. Every day, choices whisper from the edges of consciousness. To stay or go, speak or remain silent, leap or hesitate. It seems you are the observer, the mind standing at the intersection, preparing to choose a road. But what if you are not the only player in this dance? What if reality itself, the very structure of your world, is waiting too? This is not a metaphor, but a challenge to everything you've been told about agency, free will, and the nature of decision. Why is it that sometimes options refuse to crystallize until the very last instant? Why do you sense outcomes swirling in the background, unknown, unfixed, until your focus lands and suddenly, one path is real, The logic of cause and effect falters here. Instead, there's a flickering, an uncertainty that feels alive. Are you shaping your life? Or is life waiting for you to look before it reveals its shape? Science does not offer comfort. At the quantum scale, causality is strange and slippery. In the famous delayed choice experiments, it's as if the universe itself refuses to decide the outcome until the observer acts. Light moves as a wave and a particle, its reality suspended until someone chooses how to look. It is both and neither, a question only answered in the moment. This principle does not stay locked in the realm of atoms. The mind is not immune to this uncertainty. Have you ever felt that, until you commit, possibilities remain strangely potent? Even as you weigh your choices, something in the world waits. The phone doesn't ring until you release expectation. The answer arrives only after you give up searching. A relationship hovers, undefined, until a word is spoken, and then the path closes behind you. Are you the creator of your story, or just the observer who collapses it into form? Who holds the power, your conscious mind, or the deeper, hidden structure of reality? Is your sense of agency an illusion, a narrative woven to protect against chaos? Or is there a partnership at work, a dance of will and uncertainty, with each awaiting the other's move? Notice the unease this question stirs. You were taught to believe in control, in the dignity of choice. But the quantum world suggests something else, an intimacy between observer and observed, a blurring of boundaries. What does it mean for your life if decisions are alive before you make them, if outcomes are suspended until you bring your gaze? There's a humility here, a recognition of how little you truly command. At the crossroads, you stand with the universe, each waiting for the other to choose. The pressure builds. The more you stare, the more uncertain things become. Some moments feel impossible to resolve, as if the very act of choosing might unravel something essential. The longer you hesitate, the more powerful the uncertainty grows. Are you choosing, or are you being chosen? Notice how the body reacts. The pulse quickens. The breath shortens. The mind scrambles for answers. It wants a narrative, a story in which you are the hero, the decider, the one in charge. But the universe will not be pinned down. It remains slippery, paradoxical, dancing just beyond the reach of certainty. Here, at this crossroads, the usual tools fail. Logic, reason, even intuition, all are tested by this flickering uncertainty. Sometimes, the more you look, the less clear things become. The act of scrutiny distorts the very fabric of your decision. The outcome is not revealed by force of will, but by a subtle partnership, an entanglement between consciousness and the unknown. The paradox deepens. If every decision is alive until it's observed, who is the true author of your fate? Does the mind create reality, or does reality shape the mind? Is your sense of self just the shadow of a larger, deeper dance, one in which you play both participant and witness, actor and audience? Feel the weight of this question. There is no answer that soothes. Only a lingering sense of awe, a humility before the mystery. The crossroads is not a place of power, but of surrender. To choose is to accept the partnership, to step forward, not as master, but as co-creator with a universe that is always, endlessly waiting to see what you will do. Now, with the quantum weirdness unsettled in your mind, a new contradiction emerges. If outcomes shimmer with uncertainty until the very moment of choice, how real is your freedom? Is every option truly open, or is the sense of possibility just another illusion? Next, we will confront the riddle of the options themselves. Are your choices predetermined, or pure chaos? Now that reality seems rigged, does freedom of choice even exist, or is it a beautiful lie you keep telling yourself? Now that reality seems rigged, does freedom of choice even exist, or is it a beautiful lie you keep telling yourself? Pause and consider the map of your life. It appears crowded with choices, careers, partners, cities, beliefs. The surface is dazzling, a constellation of options. But under this glitter, a shadow forms. A suspicion that every path might already be charted, or worse, that nothing is charted at all. The comfort of choice collides with the terror of fate and the vertigo of chaos. If the universe hesitates to decide, Are you truly free, or only spinning inside a rigged game? The mind is built to crave control. From childhood, you are told you can be anything, do anything, become anyone. The promise of infinite options is intoxicating. But with every open door, anxiety seeps in. If every outcome is available, how can any choice be meaningful? The moment you choose, the world shrinks. Doors slam shut, and the weight of what's lost grows heavier. But there's another suspicion, one more unsettling. What if the options themselves are not real? If everything is determined by prior causes, your genetics, your upbringing, the molecules in your brain, how much of your freedom is real and how much is theater? Maybe every move is predicted, every choice a domino falling in a line set long ago. Now, let the possibility of pure chaos enter. The quantum world hints at randomness, at the unpredictable leap of particles. No script, no plan, only the thrill and terror of the unplanned. But here, too, freedom slips through your fingers. In chaos, choice is overwhelmed. Agency dissolves and meaning evaporates. You become a leaf in the wind, carried by forces you cannot see. So where does real choice live, if not in fate and not in chaos? The tension between these extremes can hollow out the heart, leaving you caught in a loop of anxiety. If reality is rigged, every decision becomes a ritual, a performance for an audience of one. If reality is random, every effort is meaningless. The sense of agency, so cherished, so necessary, becomes fragile, threatened on every side. The world's wisdom traditions wrestle with this paradox. Some say everything is written, every fate already sealed. Others say the mind is a spark, free to ignite new worlds. The truth, if there is one, refuses to settle. You live as if you are free, even when you suspect you are not. You chase possibilities, even as you sense the boundaries closing in. This is the true illusion. The belief that options are infinite, that choice is boundless, that the self is a sovereign agent. But freedom is narrower than it appears. Every path is shaped by forces beyond your awareness. Childhood traumas, social scripts, cultural programming, all these unseen hands guide your steps. Even your rebellions are patterned, anticipated by a world that knows your moves. And yet, something resists this fatalism. The mind yearns to break free, to feel the fire of agency. Even if the choices are small, even if the script is mostly written, the act of choosing feels real. It is real. The paradox is that the illusion of choice is itself a source of power. The sense of agency, even when constructed, gives birth to meaning. The world may be rigged, but the feeling of freedom remains a lifeline, a thread of hope in a tangled universe. But what if this hope is itself a trap? The more you insist on freedom, the more anxiety you breed. Every unchosen path becomes a ghost, every missed opportunity a wound. The illusion of infinite options magnifies regret. You are never satisfied, never at rest, always haunted by what might have been. There is a cost to this endless seeking. It drains the spirit, fractures the self. The pursuit of freedom becomes its own kind of prison, a cage made of mirrors, each reflecting a different version of your life, none of them fully real. Still, a deeper paradox hums beneath the surface. Even as you recognize the illusion, you continue to choose. You make meaning in the act, in the gesture, in the willingness to step forward. The rigged game becomes a theater of courage, the chaos a dance of creativity. Agency is both real and false, powerful and powerless, all at once. This is not a cause for despair. It is a call to humility, to the bittersweet recognition that freedom is both precious and limited. The universe will not give you certainty. It offers, instead, the beauty of the unresolved, the tension between fate and chaos, the thrill of acting in a world that refuses to guarantee the outcome. Now that you have sensed the instability beneath your choices, the next paradox emerges. If freedom itself is suspect, what happens inside you when faced with the terror of true commitment? Is indecision not a flaw, but a shield against the unknown? Next, we will discover how the mind can want opposing things at once, and why indecision feels safer than the clarity you secretly crave. If indecision feels safe, what's hiding in the moment you commit? If indecision feels safe, what's hiding in the moment you commit? In the silent chambers of the mind, desire splits like a beam of light through a prism. One moment, you are pulled forward by the thrill of the new. A job offer, a relationship, a daring move. The next, a weight tugs you back toward the comfort of the familiar, the ache of caution, the gravity of what's already known. The experience is not simply confusion. It is an agonizing clarity that you are torn between two equal and opposite hungers. There is no middle ground. The closer you move to one desire, the more sharply you feel the sting of what must be left behind. The paradox is sharp enough to draw blood. To choose is to lose, but to refuse is to remain trapped in a world of shadows. Your brain becomes a battleground, every neuron firing for a different outcome, every thought at war with itself. This is not a flaw. It is a feature of consciousness, a signal that you are alive, sensitive to the world's complexity. The brain is built for contradiction. Deep in its architecture, it holds space for competing truths. Safety and risk, belonging and freedom, routine and adventure. The mind's evolution is a dance between survival and expansion, comfort and exploration. When the stakes are low, the split is easy to ignore. You choose coffee or tea, blue shirt or black, and move on. But when life presses in, when real transformation is on the line, the conflict sharpens. The stakes feel cosmic. One part of you aches to leap, the other to retreat. Even as you imagine the thrill of commitment, a cold dread pools beneath your ribs. What will be lost? Who will you become? Will the new path betray the old self? Indecision, then, becomes a strange kind of refuge. It is the pause before the fall, the liminal space where all options remain alive. In this twilight, nothing is lost, but nothing is gained. You remain both explorer and captive, both dreamer and skeptic. Time stretches thin, the world narrows, but for a moment, you are safe from the wound of regret. But what is hiding in this pause? What is the cost of safety when it becomes a prison? The paralyzed brain cannot remain still forever. Life presses in, demanding movement, demanding commitment. The longer you linger, the more the energy of desire turns to anxiety, then to exhaustion. The thrill of possibility is replaced by the dull ache of stagnation. Even joy sours. The mind, built for choice, suffers in the absence of action. The brain is not content with endless waiting. Its circuits are designed to resolve tension, to collapse uncertainty into clarity. But when the conflict is too great, when the stakes are too high, it freezes. You loop through the same arguments, the same scenarios, hoping for relief, hoping for some outside force to tip the balance. Sometimes, paralysis masquerades as wisdom. The voice of caution sounds reasonable, even noble. Let's wait until we're sure. Let's gather more information. Let's not rush. But the truth is, you will never be sure. The world does not promise certainty. Every commitment is a leap into the unknown, a surrender to the reality that something must be left behind. This is the secret terror that hides beneath indecision. The fear is not of making the wrong choice, but of losing the infinite selves you could have been. The moment you commit, every other possibility dies. Yet, paradoxically, it is only in this act of loss that anything real is gained. The self is forged in the fire of commitment, shaped by the choices you make and the risks you accept. To remain in limbo is to reject the gift of becoming. Indecision feels safe because it delays this moment of transformation. But safety is not always sanctuary. Sometimes it is a velvet cage. What if the part of you that hesitates is not an enemy, but a messenger? It signals that you are at the threshold of change. The pain of indecision is a measure of the potential energy stored in your desire. The greater the split, the greater the opportunity for growth. Every moment of paralysis holds within it the seed of a new self, waiting to be born in the space between wanting and choosing. But how do you move? How do you break the spell of indecision when every option feels both essential and fatal? The answer is not brute force or self-recrimination. The answer is gentleness, a willingness to sit with the discomfort, to honor both sides of your desire, to listen deeply for what matters most. Commitment is not the enemy of freedom. It is its fulfillment. Only by choosing can you know who you are. The quantum world offers a strange consolation. Before observation, all outcomes are possible. But the act of observing, of choosing, is what gives reality its shape. You are both the creator and the created, both the observer and the observed. To remain paralyzed is to refuse this power. To choose is to become, to step into the story, to collapse possibility into presence. So next time you feel the paralysis of opposing desires, remember, indecision is not the absence of will, but the presence of too many selves, each crying out to be chosen. The pain is not a flaw. It is the evidence of your complexity, your depth, your capacity to hold the world's contradictions. Let the tension remain unresolved. For now, let the question echo. If indecision feels safe, what's hiding in the moment you commit? The answer is not meant to soothe. It is meant to awaken, to stir, to remind you that your freedom is forged in the furnace of desire. Now, standing at the edge of your own longing, another paradox arises. If the mind can ache for what it cannot have, can it also mourn for lives never lived? Next, we will examine the shadowy territory of loss and possibility and ask, if regret grows in the soil of possibility, why do you mourn lives you never touched? If regret grows in the soil of possibility, why do you mourn lives you never touched? The heart holds a peculiar ache, so quiet and pervasive that it is often mistaken for longing, nostalgia, or even a symptom of ambition. It is the ache for unlived lives, the ghostly weight of what might have been. These are not mistakes, not failures, not even missed opportunities in the usual sense. They are alternate realities, flickering at the edge of memory, pulling gently at the corners of your attention. The mind returns to them, unbidden, as if searching for closure in a story that never began. Every crossroad, every choice made, is a collapse of infinity. With one decision, 1,000 worlds slip away. This is the quantum secret that pulses through your existence. The self is both singular and multiple. You are what you have done, but you are also haunted by the echoes of what you never dared. The unlived life casts a shadow, silent, patient, but ever-present. Why do you feel regret for lives you never touched? The answer is not found in logic. It is an emotional residue, a form of mourning for versions of yourself who remain forever out of reach. Perhaps there is a career you never pursued, a city you never called home, a friendship never deepened, a love never confessed. These possibilities become haunting presences, shaping the contours of your actual life with their absence. Regret in this context is not just sorrow for what was lost, but grief for what was never given the chance to exist. This is the paradox at the heart of human consciousness. Your imagination is so powerful, so fertile, that it creates parallel realities, each as vivid as the one you are living. The mind loops through scenes, fragments, and faces, inventing alternate timelines with effortless creativity. Sometimes, these are comforting fantasies. Other times, they are sources of torment, reminders of the roads not taken. This form of regret is uniquely cruel because it is impossible to resolve. You cannot go back and try the other path. The life you mourn is not real, yet it is felt deeply, as if it were a lost limb. Psychologists call this counterfactual thinking, the human tendency to imagine how things could have been different. But there is something more mysterious at work, a quantum echo that reverberates in the soul. The universe itself is built from possibilities. At every moment, reality splits and recombines, experimenting with form, structure, and outcome. The human mind, it seems, carries the same logic. You are not only a product of your choices, but also of your imagined alternatives. Every dream, every fear, every hesitation plants a seed in the garden of possibility. Some flowers bloom, others remain underground, unseen, but not unfelt. Regret for unlived lives is, in a sense, a tribute to your own complexity. It is evidence of the vastness within you, the capacity to contain multitudes, to grieve not only for what was lost but for what could never be. There is a kind of grace in this, a strange beauty in the ability to feel so deeply for what was never real. The pain is a sign that you are fully awake to the richness of existence. But this pain can also be corrosive. The mind, in its restless search for meaning, can become ensnared by the fantasy of what if. You find yourself comparing your actual life to imaginary standards, measuring happiness against impossible alternatives. Satisfaction becomes elusive, joy tinged with the bitterness of the unattainable. The unlived life becomes a yardstick by which the present is always found wanting. To carry this burden is to live in a perpetual state of displacement, never fully here, never fully satisfied, always glancing sideways at the ghosts of possibility. The unlived lives do not disappear. They wait, patient, at the periphery of every decision. They whisper, sometimes with envy, sometimes with sadness, always with the unanswerable question. Could it have been different? Would it have been better? Yet, this longing is not only destructive. It can be a source of energy, a quiet force urging you toward growth and transformation. The ache for the unlived life is a call to action, a signal that something within you seeks expression. It is a reminder that the universe is still open, that new paths can be made, new chapters written. The pain of the possible is also the promise of the possible. Still, the paradox cannot be escaped. To pursue one dream is to forsake another. Every act of creation is also an act of destruction. The artist destroys blank canvas. The traveler leaves behind home. The lover lets go of solitude. To live fully is to accept the cost of existence, the inevitability of lost lives, the reality of roads never taken. This is not a call to relentless striving or endless regret. It is an invitation to make peace with the shadows that follow you, to honor the complexity of your mind, which can create worlds and grieve their absence, to hold your unlived lives tenderly, as one might hold old letters or photographs, not with bitterness, but with gratitude for their place in your inner landscape. The question remains sharp and unresolved. Why do you mourn lives you never touched? The answer lies in the nature of consciousness itself. To be awake is to know that every moment is both birth and burial, that the self is both finite and infinite, shaped as much by what it loses as by what it gains. Let yourself rest in this paradox. There is no comfort here, only the quiet dignity of being human, of carrying your own multitudes, of feeling the ache of possibility as both wound and wonder. Now, with the echo of unlived lives resonating in the heart, another quantum riddle waits. If the universe can delay its decision until it's observed, is it possible for you to do the same with your regrets, with your choices, with your sense of self? Next, we will explore the strange invitation of the quantum switch and ask, if the universe delays its answer until you look, what if you could do the same with your regrets? If the universe delays its answer until you look, what if you could do the same with your regrets? The universe, at its most fundamental level, refuses to settle. Particle does not choose its path until it is watched. Light travels every route, inhabits every possibility, and only when a gaze lands, only when a question is asked, does reality pick a single thread from the tapestry. The quantum world is an endless rehearsal of outcomes, a refusal to commit until the last possible instant. For those living in the theater of human choice, the lesson is unsettling and oddly hopeful. Regret is the price the mind pays for believing decisions are permanent. Every choice closes infinite doors. Every action narrows the field of possibility. The mind, haunted by what it has excluded, circles back, replaying moments, running simulations of how things could have been different. The sorrow is as real as any physical pain. Yet, quantum reality whispers another possibility. What if you didn't have to commit to regret? What if you could live in the space between decisions, holding every outcome softly, waiting until life itself calls for resolution? Consider this: when physicists designed experiments with delayed choice, they found that the past itself seemed flexible. Reality rewrote itself in the instant the observer made a choice, sometimes long after the event was thought to have occurred. The lesson is clear: the finality of the past is a mirage. Until attention lands, until meaning is made, every path is still alive, trembling with potential. This isn't only a property of subatomic particles. It is a secret encoded in consciousness itself. Pause and let this mystery settle in your body. Think of a decision you regret, one that lingers in your mind like a cold draft through a closed door. The mind insists that what's done is done. The stories are written. The pain is etched. But what if that moment is still malleable, still subject to change? Not in its facts, but in its meaning. The quantum switch is not the erasure of the past, but the ability to let its story rest, unwritten, until your attention calls for resolution. How does this look in ordinary life? It is the art of holding ambiguity without collapse. When regret threatens to harden into a permanent scar, you breathe and remind yourself, the meaning of this event is not fixed. The interpretation is not final. You haven't yet observed the ending. The self that chose and the self that mourns are both still fluid, part of a wave that has not collapsed into a single identity. There is freedom here, but also discomfort. The mind is conditioned to demand closure. Ambiguity is intolerable. The urge to judge, to label, to settle the matter grows stronger with every passing moment. The quantum switch is a gentle rebellion against this demand. It is the ability to wait, to trust that clarity will come, but not yet. It is the courage to let the story remain open, to let possibility breathe for just a little longer. Some will say this is avoidance, a refusal to take responsibility. But the quantum switch is not passivity. It is a form of active attention, a choice to refrain from collapsing the past into a single, sorrowful narrative. Instead, you hold the memory lightly, watching for new information, new growth, new perspectives. Time itself becomes a collaborator. With every day, new meaning can emerge, reshaping what you thought was fixed forever. This approach changes everything. Relationships, once marked by old wounds, become spaces for healing, for revision, for surprising connection. Decisions, once judged as mistakes, become seeds for wisdom, for empathy, for unexpected joy. The mind, no longer chained to regret, discovers the richness of the unfinished story. You are not sentenced to live in the ruins of your own choices. You are free to re-inhabit the past, to revisit the moment, to switch the meaning when new light arrives. But this freedom is not absolute. The quantum switch is not magic. Some events, some wounds, resist reinterpretation. Some losses are irrevocable. The mind, in its longing for certainty, may still reach for harsh judgments. But even here, the spirit of the quantum world offers a softer stance. You can acknowledge pain without insisting on a single story. You can honor what was lost without condemning yourself to endless punishment. The switch is a practice, not a solution, a way of holding the world with humility and wonder, refusing the tyranny of regret. Think, too, of the choices not yet made. The crossroads ahead shimmer with potential, each path alive until you look, until you act. The quantum switch teaches patience. You don't need to force the decision. You don't need to collapse possibility before it's time. You can wait for clarity, for the inner signal that says, now. And when you act, you do so knowing that the meaning of your choice is never fully fixed. The story will continue to unfold, its echoes traveling forward and backward, always open to revision. There is a profound gentleness in this way of being. The pressure to get it right relaxes. The fear of permanent error fades. Life becomes a series of experiments, each choice an act of participation with the unfolding world. You are both observer and creator, responsible but not tyrannized by the past, free to revise your sense of self as new evidence arrives. Of course, this path is not always comfortable. The world may pressure you to declare, to choose, to move on. The voice of regret may hiss that waiting is weakness, that forgiveness is escape. But you, holding the quantum switch, know otherwise. You are honoring the true nature of reality, its softness, its complexity, its refusal to be pinned down. You are choosing to live in harmony with possibility, to let meaning emerge in its own time. The paradox is not resolved. The ache of regret does not disappear, but it changes shape. It becomes lighter, less tyrannical, more forgiving. You are not a prisoner of your decisions. You are a participant in an ongoing dance, a wave that has not yet chosen its shore. Let this riddle echo. If the universe delays its answer until you look, what if you could do the same with your regrets? The question is not a trick. It is an invitation to gentleness, to patience, to a deeper trust in the process of becoming. You can wait, you can watch, you can let the meaning settle when it's ready, not a moment before. Now, having tasted the freedom of the quantum switch, you may wonder what becomes of the past itself. If every story can be rewritten, every memory revised, then what is the nature of your recollection? Next, we will step into the labyrinth of memory, where the mind replays infinite timelines, and ask, now that you've glimpsed alternate timelines, why does your mind replay the past as if it can be rewritten? Now that you've glimpsed alternate timelines, why does your mind replay the past as if it can be rewritten? Memory, so often trusted as the compass by which you navigate the world, reveals itself as something altogether stranger and more slippery. You remember a conversation, a word spoken in haste, a gesture misunderstood, and the event loops in your mind again and again, as if searching for a new ending. You reimagine your reaction, rewrite the dialogue, substitute courage for hesitation, kindness for anger. The scene changes shape with every replay, the meaning shifts, and yet the ache never truly disappears. The past, supposedly settled, refuses to be still. Science confirms what intuition already suspects. Memory is not a vault but a canvas, painted and repainted each time you recall it. Every recollection is a reconstruction, tinted by mood, context, and new information. The mind cannot help but meddle. In the quantum world, a particle's history is not fixed until it is measured. Until then, all possible paths remain. Memory, it seems, follows a similar law. What you remember is not what happened, but what you believe happened, edited, revised, made sensible for the narrative your life is weaving. This is the trap of infinite replays. Regret lingers not because the past was particularly painful, but because the mind senses that the story is unfinished, the outcome unsatisfying. Every return to the memory is an attempt to close the loop, to find an alternate ending that would make the present more bearable. But each replay only stirs the waters, creating new possibilities, new what-ifs, and deepening the uncertainty. Your memory, then, is not a judge but a restless playwright. You are not only the actor, but also the director and the audience, endlessly revising the script. The more you revisit an event, the more the details blur. Was it truly your fault? Did they really say those words? What might have happened if you had spoken up, walked away, chosen differently? The truth becomes less important than the craving for closure, for certainty in a world that offers none. This compulsion is not mere nostalgia or self-torment. It is a survival strategy rooted in the biology of the brain. The mind, always hungry for learning, returns to the scene of pain in search of meaning and mastery. Perhaps next time you will know what to do. Perhaps, by reliving the moment enough times, you will finally settle its outcome. But memory, like the quantum world, refuses to obey. The more you look, the more the story changes. The loop never closes. And yet, some part of you clings to the replay, unwilling to let go. The possibility of rewriting the past is intoxicating. If the universe is built from possibilities, if your memory is endlessly flexible, why not try to reshape what hurts? But with every attempt, the sense of reality drifts further. Memory becomes a hall of mirrors, every image reflecting a different possibility, none of them quite true. The cost is subtle but real. Life is lived less in the present and more in the theater of the mind, where old pains are rehearsed and future anxieties scripted in advance. The world around you dims as the inner drama takes center stage. The self fractures, stretched between the reality that is and the multitude of realities that could have been. Why does the mind refuse to let go? Perhaps it fears the finality of acceptance, the collapse of possibility into a single, imperfect reality. As long as the story is open, regret can be delayed, responsibility deferred. The quantum world offers a metaphor for this hesitation. Only the act of observation collapses the wave. Until then, all futures remain. But at some point, the replay itself becomes a prison. The search for closure keeps the wound alive. The more you seek to settle the past, the more entangled you become in its uncertainty. The present loses its freshness, the future its invitation. As you wander the corridors of memory, forever searching for a door that leads home. Is there a way out? Not by force, not by demanding certainty where none exists. The answer is gentler, more paradoxical. To release the replay, you must accept the unreliability of memory itself. The past cannot be fixed, but your relationship to it can be softened. Meaning is not delivered by the facts, but by the willingness to let the unfinished story rest. The wound does not need to heal perfectly. The ache does not need to vanish. You can let the loop be, knowing it is only one possible story among many, always shifting, always unfinished. This acceptance is not resignation. It is a liberation. When you stop demanding that memory behave like a courtroom, you begin to discover its hidden gifts. The past becomes a field for creativity, for compassion, for the gentle rewriting of your own narrative. The mind learns to bless what was, even as it grieves what was lost or never found. You are no longer at war with your recollections. You are at peace with their strangeness. The quantum lesson is clear. Reality is not singular, and neither is your past. Each memory is a wave, a shimmering field of possibility, collapsing only when you demand it settle. But even then, the story can change tomorrow. You are never finished with yourself, never finished with your history. The trap of infinite replays is also the invitation to radical forgiveness, not by rewriting the facts, but by loosening your grip on the need for certainty. So the question lingers, sharp and unresolved. Now that you've glimpsed alternate timelines, why does your mind replay the past as if it can be rewritten? The answer, like all quantum truths, is both haunting and hopeful. The mind is built for possibility, for second chances, for the dream of becoming someone new. But the only way forward is through the acceptance of memory's unreliability, the willingness to bless the unfinished, to let the story rest. Rest in this paradox and let it soften you. Life is not a finished novel, but a manuscript always in revision, pages smudged, meanings shifting. The past can never be truly settled, but you can settle yourself within its shifting sands. Now, as the echoes of memory fade and the mind drifts toward the horizon of emotion, a new paradox stirs. If the mind can replay the past endlessly, where do feelings come from? Are your emotions relics of old wounds, or signals from the future waiting to be felt? Next, we will turn to the mysterious timing of emotion and ask, if emotions arrive before events, how can you trust what you feel right now? If emotions arrive before events, how can you trust what you feel right now? You sit with a feeling, and it arrives unannounced. There is no clear reason, no fresh memory, no provocation from the outside world. The feeling sweeps over you, a wave of anxiety, a stab of joy, a hollow note of dread. Sometimes it seems to come from nowhere, other times from everywhere at once. Is this feeling a relic of the past, a bruise from old pain rising again? Or is it a whisper from the future, a signal from what has not yet happened, curling backwards through time? This is the paradox at the heart of emotion. Feelings do not obey the boundaries of time. Your body does not distinguish between an old threat and a new one. The heart beats faster, the skin tingles, the breath tightens. The mind, desperate for cause and effect, hunts for a story, searching the past for meaning or projecting ahead for warning. Yet sometimes no narrative fits. The emotion arrives, raw and insistent, before the facts assemble, before the mind can catch up. The quantum world suggests that time itself is not linear, not fixed, not the ruler you were taught to believe in. Particles can communicate across distances, respond to measurements that have not yet been made. Reality is flexible, responsive, alive to possibility. And perhaps your feelings, so often mysterious and unpredictable, are tuned to these same currents. They are signals in a sea of potential, echoes from before and after, blurring the line between memory and premonition. Consider the moments when joy or fear has seized you without warning. The call from a friend before you even knew you needed comfort. The sense of dread before an event you could not name. The excitement for an adventure not yet begun. These emotions seem unanchored, floating free of chronology, bending the arrow of time. You wonder, are these feelings predictions, preparations for what is to come? Or are they ghosts, returning from wounds and wonders you thought were buried? The mind, skilled in self-preservation, often pulls from the past. It replays moments of pain, reactivates old defenses, floods the body with chemicals in anticipation of familiar threats. This is a survival mechanism, honed over centuries, designed to keep you safe. The body remembers even when the conscious mind forgets. An old fear, a forgotten grief, a childhood wound. These can rise without warning, coloring the present with shades of the past. But sometimes emotion moves in the opposite direction. The future leaks into the present. You sense the approach of change, the weight of decisions yet to be made. The heart trembles at possibilities not yet chosen, paths not yet walked. Anticipation, dread, hope, all are evidence of the mind's ability to travel ahead, to prepare for what might be. In this way, emotion is not only a relic but a compass, pointing toward what needs attention, care, or courage. Trusting your feelings becomes an act of interpretation, not surrender. The body speaks, but the language is not always clear. You ask yourself, is this sorrow mine, or was it inherited? Is this fear a warning, or just an echo? Is this joy for something real, or something only imagined? The mind spins, seeking solid ground. In the swirl of these questions, the temptation is to judge emotion as reliable or unreliable, true or false. But feelings are neither facts nor lies. They are signals, complex, layered, encoded with information both conscious and hidden. They are the sum of memory, imagination, intuition, and biology. They are the weather of the self, shaped by seasons you cannot always name. The challenge is to listen without believing every story your mind invents. To welcome emotion as a guest, not a ruler. To recognize that feelings can be rooted in the past and shaped by the future, sometimes in the same breath. This is emotional time travel, the capacity to sense across the boundaries of now, to be moved by what was and what might be, often at the same time. The mind may demand certainty, but emotion refuses to be pinned down. It washes through you, changing shape with every passing thought, every new experience. What feels like terror today may be revealed as excitement tomorrow. What stings as grief may unfold into gratitude, given enough distance. The arrow of time bends, and with it, the meaning of your feelings. In the quantum world, the observer changes the observed. In the world of emotion, attention changes experience. The act of noticing a feeling does not just record it. It shapes it, colors it, sometimes even calls it into being. You are both the witness and the creator, the traveler and the guide. This is not an invitation to distrust yourself. It is an invitation to curiosity, to humility, to the acceptance that your inner world is as complex and shifting as the universe itself. The urge to classify, to diagnose, to control every feeling is understandable. But there is a deeper wisdom in learning to wait, to witness, to let the feeling be, knowing that its source may be older or newer than you can grasp, and its meaning will evolve with time. Emotional time travel is a gift, but also a challenge. It allows you to heal old wounds, to anticipate future needs, to empathize with others across the gulf of experience. But it also exposes you to sorrow that is not entirely your own, to anxiety for futures that may never arrive. The price of this sensitivity is the ache of uncertainty, the knowledge that you are never entirely here, never entirely now. How, then, can you trust what you feel? Not by demanding certainty, but by listening gently, asking questions, and allowing the answer to shift. Not every emotion is a command. Some are invitations to inquiry, to deeper attention, to self-compassion. Over time, you learn to distinguish between echoes and predictions, between old scars and new intuitions. But you also learn to live with the mystery, to let some questions remain open. The paradox remains unresolved. If emotions arrive before events, how can you trust what you feel right now? The only honest answer is to practice patience with yourself, to become a compassionate observer of your own experience. You are not required to settle every feeling, to define its origin, to resolve its meaning before acting. Sometimes the act of witnessing is enough. Let yourself rest in the current of feeling, aware of its complexity, its history, its wildness. The heart is a time traveler, the mind a mapmaker, the body a vessel for currents you cannot always name. Trust in the journey, even when the destination is unclear. The weather will change, the meaning will evolve, and you will remain curious, awake, and alive to the endless unfolding of possibility. Now, having lingered in the paradox of emotional time, a new contradiction gathers on the horizon. If your freedom to choose is limitless, why does it so often feel like a burden? Is it possible that too much possibility can imprison, rather than liberate? Next, we will explore the shadow side of abundance and ask, now that you see choice everywhere, what if the real prison is infinite possibility? Now that you see choice everywhere, what if the real prison is infinite possibility? Freedom, for all its promise, is rarely as light as it seems. You are told that choice is liberation, that the more options you possess, the more fully you can shape your own destiny. The world offers a buffet of possibilities: careers, relationships, philosophies, identities, places to live, ways to be. Yet, a subtle heaviness accumulates, an invisible gravity that builds with every new option that enters your field of vision. In a world saturated with alternatives, you discover an unexpected side effect. Decision becomes not a celebration, but a burden. Choice, when it was rare, was a prize. To have options was to be powerful. But now, with every desire met by a dozen possible paths, the act of choosing is strained by the threat of missing out. The self is split by endless evaluation, each option demanding to be weighed, each road flickering with potential rewards and risks. What you once called freedom now feels like a maze with no center, no exit, only looping corridors of what-ifs and maybe SOS. You sense it in the smallest details. The hours lost scrolling through menus, reading reviews, comparing products, measuring each decision against a phantom ideal. The joy of spontaneity dissolves into the paralysis of comparison. Every yes becomes 100 no's. Every commitment a quiet mourning for all the lives not lived. The mind, overwhelmed, begins to resist the very process it once craved. This is decision fatigue, a silent epidemic of the modern world. The privilege of choice mutates into a source of exhaustion. You wake up with grand plans to take control, to seize your agency, to craft your best life. But by midday, after 100 small decisions, what to eat, what to wear, which task to start first, your willpower is spent. The larger choices, the ones that actually matter, are postponed. You shrink from them, depleted and foggy, the spirit dulled by the sheer abundance of paths. Why does freedom become a cage? The answer is hidden in the architecture of your brain. The mind is not built for infinite options. Its circuits, refined over eons, evolved for a world of limited resources, narrow choices, and urgent survival. When faced with a handful of options, you can act decisively. But when faced with an endless sea, the system stalls. Every evaluation drains energy, every comparison taxes the spirit, every delay compounds anxiety. The possibility of regret, once a distant fear, becomes a near certainty. The market and culture celebrate the myth of limitless potential. You can be anything. You can have it all. These slogans, meant to inspire, become quietly oppressive. For every door opened, 1,000 others close. The mind, keenly aware of opportunity cost, becomes hypervigilant for the best possible choice. Anything less than perfect feels like failure. Satisfaction is chased but rarely caught. In this labyrinth, it is not the lack of options that haunts you, but their abundance. The paradox of freedom is that it requires the courage to exclude, to accept loss, to grieve the unchosen. Most are never taught this art. The focus remains on acquiring more, achieving more, keeping every window open as long as possible. The result is a self fractured by indecision, haunted by the echo of abandoned futures. Some try to solve this problem by outsourcing their choices, following trends, seeking advice, sticking to routine. But even these strategies offer only temporary relief. The knowledge of all that could have been lingers. The question, did I choose well? Buzzes in the background, impossible to answer, endlessly replayed. there is a deeper cost, too. As the burden of choice grows heavier, you risk disconnecting from your own desire. The act of deciding becomes an exercise in avoidance, not creation. You look for the safest option, the least painful regret, the most defensible justification. The fire of intuition, the pulse of inner knowing, is drowned out by the static of analysis. Is there a way out of this cage? Not by seeking more freedom, but by learning to cherish limits. The mind, paradoxically, finds relief not in abundance but in constraint. When options narrow, the self can settle. The value of what is chosen increases when what is not chosen fades from view. This is not a call to mediocrity, but to wisdom, a recognition that agency is less about what you can do and more about what you choose not to pursue. Choice, at its best, is not about sampling every flavor, but about committing deeply to what matters. The cage dissolves when you give yourself permission to say no, to close doors without peering back, to accept that the richness of a life comes not from breadth, but from depth. Every no frees the yes to bloom more fully. But this is not easy. The fear of missing out, the pressure to optimize, the hunger for perfection. These are powerful currents. It takes courage to choose less, to be content with what is rather than what might have been. Yet in this discipline is a new kind of freedom, lighter and more nourishing than the frantic chase for more. The paradox persists. Infinite possibility looks like liberation, but feels like imprisonment. The mind is a brilliant architect of options, but a poor inhabitant of endless rooms. To live well is to choose, to accept the pain of loss, and to trust that meaning is not found in what might have been, but in what is made sacred by commitment. So you stand in the center of abundance, sensing the weight of all you could be. The old myths promise satisfaction, but the deeper wisdom is quieter. Not everything matters. Not every door must be opened. Freedom, real freedom, is the power to draw boundaries, to cherish the finite, to find peace in the path actually walked. Let the question linger, unresolved. Now that you see choice everywhere, what if the real prison is infinite possibility? This is the ache of the modern soul, the burden of too many roads, the fatigue of endless deciding, the quiet hunger for a life that feels both chosen and enough. Now, as you gather your strength at the crossroads of abundance and limitation, another paradox calls. If every choice splits the self, if every commitment leaves a shadow, then what becomes of you after a lifetime of decisions? Next, we will follow the forking paths of identity and ask, if each decision fractures your identity, who's left after a lifetime of choices? If each decision fractures your identity, who's left after a lifetime of choices? Every day you stand before invisible doors. Sometimes you open them with certainty. Other times you hesitate, uncertain what lies beyond. Each decision, grand or trivial, conscious or automatic, reshapes the path you walk and the person you become. With every yes and every no, you perform a quiet act of self-creation. But there's a paradox humming beneath this process. Every choice births a new self, even as it leaves another behind. You sense this in the turning points of life. Choose to move to a new city, and a version of you who stayed behind flickers out of existence. Accept one job, decline another, and two futures begin to diverge. Even small acts, what you eat for breakfast, which words you speak to a friend, nudge your life in new directions. With each step, the ground behind you closes. The person who might have been lingers as a ghost at the edge of your awareness. This is the riddle of identity. You are taught to think of yourself as a single, continuous being, a thread winding unbroken through time. But in reality, the self is a tapestry woven from choices, chance, and circumstance. The path behind you is littered with abandoned selves, the echoes of people you could have been. Quantum physics mirrors this strangeness. At the smallest scales, reality splits with every measurement, every possibility branching into its own universe. You, too, are a quantum traveler, splitting and merging, carrying with you the memory of roads not taken. The comfort of a stable self dissolves into a shimmering uncertainty. Who are you if each decision creates a fracture? How many versions of you wander unseen, alive only in memory or imagination? As the years pass, the weight of these splits accumulates. You carry within you the residues of former selves, the child who dreamed of adventure, the teenager who longed for approval, the adult who chose caution over risk. Some versions you cherish, others you try to forget. But all are present, whispering in the corridors of your mind, coloring your perceptions, shaping your desires. Sometimes the conflict is quiet, a longing for what might have been, a faint ache for lost potential. Other times, it is fierce. Regret, shame, or self-doubt flaring up at the memory of a choice made in haste or fear. The mind becomes a council of voices, each claiming to be the true you, each offering a different story of who you are and who you might yet become. You might wonder, is there a core self beneath the layers of choice, a stable center untouched by the turbulence of decision? Some traditions say yes, pointing to an essence that endures. Others suggest the self is nothing more than the sum of its parts, a story told by a brain trying to make sense of its own complexity. The truth, if it exists, is more subtle and more paradoxical. With every decision, you affirm one identity and deny another. The cost of becoming is always the loss of what you might have been. You grow, but you also shed skins. The forking paths are not only external, they are internal too. The soul itself is a map of decisions, each fork marking a moment of divergence, a fracture in the narrative. This is not a flaw, but the price of freedom. To live is to choose, and to choose is to fragment. You cannot be everything, cannot live every life, cannot fulfill every longing. The self is shaped by exclusion as much as by inclusion. Every affirmation is a denial, every embrace a letting go. Yet there is a beauty in this fracture, a richness born of multiplicity. You are never just one thing. You are a chorus, a constellation, a crowd. Your contradictions are evidence of your depth, your complexity, your capacity to hold conflicting truths. The mind resists this, longing for simplicity, for a single story to unite the chaos. But the heart knows better. The heart remembers the roads not taken, honors the selves left behind. Some wounds remain tender, especially where decisions were forced or futures cut short by circumstance. You grieve not only for what was lost, but for who you might have become. This grief is not weakness. It is an honest reckoning with the limits of your existence. The forking paths are the record of your living, proof that you cared enough to choose, that you risked becoming. Over time, you learn to make peace with your many selves. The ones who failed, the ones who dared, the ones who never found their voice. All are part of you, all deserving of compassion. The story of your life is not a straight line, but a branching tree, each leaf a possible self, each branch a testimony to choice. But this piece is not always easy. There are moments when the cacophony of voices overwhelms, when the pressure of who you could have been drowns out the reality of who you are. In these times, the temptation is to collapse into one story, to choose a single narrative and ignore the rest. But the mind, shaped by experience and possibility, resists such reduction. It remembers the forking paths, insists on the validity of every route. Identity, then, is not a destination but a process, a dynamic unfolding, an endless negotiation between past and future, between memory and hope. The self is both fractured and whole, both divided and united by the act of choosing. The forking paths do not weaken you, they reveal your depth. So, who is left after a lifetime of choices? Not a single unbroken thread, but a rich tapestry of selves. Some realized, some only dreamed. The wisdom lies not in denying this multiplicity, but in learning to live with it, to celebrate the chorus within. Let the paradox remain, open and alive. If each decision fractures your identity, who's left after a lifetime of choices? The answer is not a single name or story, but a living, breathing mosaic, one that grows more beautiful with every choice, every loss, every moment of becoming. Now, as you stand among your many selves, another paradox calls. If watching yourself so closely changes who you are, then how can you ever know the real you? Next, we will step into the observer paradox and ask, if self-awareness is a distortion field, how can you ever know the real you? If self-awareness is a distortion field, How can you ever know the real you? There is a peculiar strangeness that arises the moment you try to watch yourself. Self-awareness, celebrated as a sign of intelligence, even enlightenment, unfolds as both a gift and a riddle. The mind turns inward, seeking to understand, to witness the real self, to uncover the truth behind the eyes. Yet, every act of observation changes what is seen. The act of looking alters the landscape, leaving you forever at a remove from your own essence. Quantum physics teaches this lesson at the edge of reality. The observer effect. A particle's position or momentum cannot be known without disturbing it. The very act of measuring is an act of interference, changing the system just by watching. The world at its smallest is never truly seen, only inferred, glimpsed through shadows and traces left behind. The harder you look, the stranger things become. So too with the mind. The moment you become the watcher, you split yourself in two. The self that acts and the self that observes. Self-consciousness arises, a double vision. Suddenly, you are both the doer and the critic, the experiencer and the narrator. You are inside your life and outside it, examining every thought, every feeling, every motive as if from a great distance. First, this seems like power. To see yourself is to control yourself, to correct mistakes, to shape a better version of who you are. Reflection promises growth, insight, transformation. But as awareness deepens, another paradox emerges. The self you observe is not the self you live. Each act of watching adds a layer, a filter, a distortion. The true center retreats, hidden behind the gaze. The more intently you watch, the less natural your actions feel. Words are chosen, gestures rehearsed, emotions managed for the invisible audience of your own awareness. Life becomes performance, authenticity a moving target. What once flowed with ease now feels labored, self-conscious, weighed down by the burden of being seen. The inner narrator, so helpful at times, becomes a judge, dissecting every move, doubting every impulse. You begin to wonder, is there a real you beneath all this watching? Or is the observer itself part of the illusion? The question stirs anxiety. You want to believe in an unchanging core, a pure self untouched by the glare of attention. But the harder you look, the more elusive it becomes. Self-awareness, like light through a prism, fragments the image, creating more selves with every new perspective. In moments of presence, when attention slips, when the gaze softens, you glimpse something truer. A laugh escapes unplanned. A movement flows without thought. An emotion arises before the mind can label it. These moments feel real, unmediated, as if the watcher has stepped aside. But as soon as you notice, as soon as you try to hold onto the feeling, it evaporates, receding back into the haze of reflection. The paradox grows sharper. You need self-awareness to learn, to heal, to navigate the world with wisdom. Yet too much attention warps the very thing you seek to know. The observer, in its quest for truth, casts shadows where it looks. The mind, tangled in its own reflection, struggles to find ground. Some traditions warn against this endless introspection. They speak of overthinking, of losing oneself in analysis, of becoming paralyzed by self-observation. Others invite a different kind of awareness, one that is soft, open, non-judgmental. In this gentler gaze, the self is not a problem to be solved, but a process to be witnessed. The observer does not seek to control, but to accompany, to be present without grasping. Still, the tension persists. The observer paradox cannot be dissolved. To know yourself is always to change yourself. The real you is not a fixed point, but a moving wave, shaped and reshaped by attention. The more you seek it, the more it recedes, like a star in the corner of your eye. The answer to the riddle is not found in clarity, but in humility, in the willingness to live inside the distortion, to accept the shifting nature of self. Sometimes you catch yourself acting for the gaze of others, adopting roles, shaping identity to fit expectation. In these moments, the observer is externalized, multiplied. The social self becomes a hall of mirrors, every reflection slightly different, every performance calibrated for an audience. Authenticity seems both urgent and impossible. how to be real when every gesture is watched. Yet, this multiplicity is not necessarily a curse. The self, like the universe, is not singular. It is layered, contextual, responsive. There is no untouched core waiting to be discovered, only a dance of presence and absence, of awareness and forgetting. To live well is not to escape the observer, but to integrate it, to learn to watch with kindness, to allow for imperfection, to let the act of seeing be gentle rather than harsh. Self-awareness can be a portal to compassion, to greater understanding of others. When you witness your own complexity, the shifting motives, the contradictions, the longing to be both known and free, you open space for empathy. The same observer effect that distorts your own self reveals the struggles of those around you. Everyone is caught in the web of awareness, everyone performing and yearning for authenticity, everyone searching for the real behind the mask. In this realization is a kind of release. You are not alone in your fragmentation. The observer is part of being human. The search for self is universal, the dance of presence and reflection ancient and ongoing. The task is not to resolve the paradox, but to live inside it, curious, humble, awake to the mystery. So let the question remain. If self-awareness is a distortion field, how can you ever know the real you? Perhaps the real is not a single truth to be discovered, but a relationship to be tended, a way of being present, of watching softly, of letting go of the need for certainty. In the gentle light of awareness, you find not a fixed identity, but a living, changing self always becoming. Rest in this paradox. The watcher and the watched are one. The self both hidden and revealed, shaped by attention, dissolved by love. The dance continues, endless and unresolved, a testament to the richness of being alive. Now, having traced the fractal lines of self-awareness, you find yourself haunted by another paradox. If every unlived life lingers in the mind, if every potential self waits in the shadows, then what becomes of your true potential? Next, we will confront the ghosts of what might have been, and ask, after confronting your phantom selves, why do you feel haunted by versions of you that never existed? After confronting your phantom selves, why do you feel haunted by versions of you that never existed? There is a persistent shadow at the edge of consciousness, not quite memory, not quite dream. It visits in quiet moments, after achievement, in the hush between decisions, or when the world goes silent and the mind slips away from the present. This shadow is not the self you regret becoming, nor the self you fear. It is the ghost of your own unlived life, a potential that never took form, a song half heard, a possibility that lingers, asking what might have been. You sense it in moments of restlessness, or in the dull ache of dissatisfaction after a victory. You sense it when you pass a stranger who feels oddly familiar, when a sudden vision of a different path flashes through your mind. An artist instead of an accountant, a wanderer instead of a settler, a lover instead of a loner. Each vision is a phantom self, woven from choices unmade, and the haunting is real. You are surrounded by echoes of who you might have become. Why is the unlived life so persistent, so intimate? Unlike regret, which fixates on errors and mistakes, the haunting of potential is gentler, more ambiguous. It does not scold. It whispers. It suggests that something essential lies just beyond your reach, not in the world you have built, but in the world that hovers in your imagination. The haunting is bittersweet, a mix of longing and mourning, an ache for something that both is and is not yours. Potential is celebrated in the culture as a limitless resource, a wellspring of hope and ambition. From childhood, you are told to live up to your potential, as if it is a fixed destination, a golden summit awaiting your arrival. But potential, by its very nature, is never fully realized. For every talent pursued, others go unexplored. For every path taken, others wither in the dark. The more you achieve, the more you are confronted with the infinity of what you have not, cannot, and will never be. This is the paradox of the human mind. The closer you come to fulfilling a dream, the more vividly you see all the dreams that remain untouched. The world opens and closes with every decision, each step forward birthing 1,000 phantom selves. Each one is real as the person you see in the mirror. Your true potential, it seems, is not a solid ground, but a shifting cloud, beautiful, unattainable, always expanding just beyond your grasp. The haunting intensifies when you compare yourself to others. You see someone who embodies qualities you admire, or who walks a path you once considered. The mind, quick to weave stories, imagines how easily you could have swapped places, how different life might be if only you had turned left instead of right, spoken up instead of remained silent, risked more, settled less. The phantom self gains weight, becomes more vivid, more convincing. The comparison is not just with others but with yourself, a self that never existed but feels, in some ways, truer than the one who did. This tension can be paralyzing. The fear of missing out, the anxiety of never quite becoming who you were meant to be, can sap the joy from the present, erode gratitude, and foster a subtle but persistent sense of inadequacy. The unlived life is a master of quiet sabotage, whispering that no matter what you do, it is not enough, because something more, something essential, remains forever unclaimed. But what is this potential, really? Is it a destination you failed to reach, or a compass guiding you toward ever deeper layers of becoming? Some philosophers suggest that the haunting is evidence of your creative power, the mind's ability to imagine, to expand, to reach beyond what is into what could be. Others warn that the pursuit of potential is a trap, an endless chase after a mirage, a way of avoiding the difficult, sacred work of embracing who you already are. There is no simple resolution. The haunting cannot be exorcised, only honored. To deny the existence of the unlived life is to deny the richness of possibility. To become obsessed with it is to lose touch with reality, to slip into the madness of chasing ghosts. The wisdom lies in learning to live alongside your phantom selves, to welcome them as reminders of your own depth, to let their presence expand rather than diminish your experience of the present. The unlived life can be a source of inspiration, a prompt to try new things, to cultivate forgotten talents, to take risks, to forgive old fears. It can open the heart to compassion, soften the judgments you hold against yourself and others. For if everyone is haunted by potential, everyone is worthy of gentleness, patience, and grace. The unlived life is a common inheritance, a secret fellowship shared by all who dare to dream. And yet, the paradox remains. You can never be all that you might have been. The self is finite, the world vast. To live is to choose, and to choose is to close doors, to leave countless possibilities unexplored. The haunting will never disappear, but its nature can change. It can shift from a source of sorrow to a companion on the journey, from a tormentor to a muse. What does it mean, then, to be haunted by versions of yourself that never existed? It means you are alive to possibility, awake to the quantum richness of the self. It means you honor the roads not taken, even as you walk the one beneath your feet. It means you have the courage to live with mystery, to love the question as much as the answer, to let the ache of potential become a wellspring of wonder rather than regret. Let the ghosts walk beside you. Welcome them into your story. Let their voices remind you that you are larger than any one identity, deeper than any single path, more mysterious than even your own dreams. The unlived life is not a condemnation, but a hymn, a reminder that you are still in motion, still becoming, still capable of surprise. Let the question linger, echoing in the quiet. After confronting your phantom selves, why do you feel haunted by versions of you that never existed? The answer is both wound and gift, a testament to your capacity for dreaming, for longing, for imagining yourself into 1,000 forms and returning, always, to the one that is yours alone. Now, as the shadows of potential settle around you, another paradox stirs. If hindsight brings perfect vision, why is it always blind to the present? Next, we will stand at the threshold of memory and clarity and ask, if hindsight brings perfect vision, why is it always blind to the present? If hindsight brings perfect vision, why is it always blind to the present? There is a peculiar cruelty to clarity. It arrives late, sometimes years after the moment has passed, sometimes just as the last echoes of consequence fade away. You replay decisions, large and small, with the keen vision only available to the person you have since become. Suddenly, the right answer reveals itself. The mistakes are obvious, the missed signs illuminated, the path forward clear. Yet the moment for action is gone, lost behind the locked gate of time. Why does this happen? Why is the mind granted perfect sight only after the opportunity to use it has evaporated? You look back on crossroads with a kind of aching wisdom, wondering how you could have been so blind, so impulsive, so fearful or naive. The present feels thick with fog, riddled with conflicting impulses and uncertainty. But the past, when seen from a distance, is lit by a cruel and beautiful light. Every detail falls into place, every motive laid bare. The once mysterious becomes painfully obvious. This is the paradox of hindsight. In the living of life, you grope forward, grasping at fragments of knowledge, guided by imperfect feelings and guesses. You choose as best you can, rarely sure, often afraid. Each decision is a leap of faith, a gesture in the dark. But as soon as the moment passes, as soon as consequences unfold, the mind reshapes the story. New meaning settles on old actions. The unknown becomes known. The ambiguous sharpens into certainty. You see what you should have done, what you should have said, what you could have avoided or embraced. Clarity, it turns out, is a product of distance. Time allows for integration, for emotion to cool, for patterns to reveal themselves. The mind, endlessly creative, reconstructs memory so that everything aligns with the person you are now, not the person you were then. It is easy to judge the past self, to condemn your own blindness, to grieve what might have been. Yet, in those moments, you did not have access to this clarity. You did not know what you would come to know. The vision of hindsight is always borrowed from the future. There is a comfort in this, but also a danger. The mind, so skilled at rewriting the past, can become harsh and unforgiving. Regret sharpens its claws, self-recrimination hardens. You demand from your former self a wisdom that was never possible. You forget the complexity of the moment, the swirl of fear and hope and confusion that shaped your choice. The story of the past becomes cleaner, simpler, easier to analyze. The pain of not knowing becomes the pain of knowing too late. But why is the present so resistant to this clarity? Why do the answers refuse to reveal themselves when you need them most? The present is alive, tangled, dynamic. The forces at play are countless, the information incomplete. You are still inside the story, still making meaning in real time. The variables shift, emotions rise and fall, unexpected events intervene. The fog is not a failure. It is a sign that life is being lived, not merely analyzed. The mind craves certainty, especially in the face of uncertainty. Hindsight feeds this craving with its illusion of inevitability. But the truth is more humbling. Clarity cannot be forced. It arrives on its own schedule, a grace bestowed by distance, not effort. To demand perfect vision in the moment is to ask for the impossible. Wisdom comes not from having the answers, but from learning to act with courage and humility amid the fog. Sometimes, in rare moments, a flash of insight pierces the present. Instantly and deeply what must be done. The heart speaks, intuition flares, the path clears for a brief and precious second. But these moments are gifts, not guarantees. More often, you stumble forward, uncertain, hoping for the best. Only later do you see the shape of the story, the lesson embedded in what you could not see at the time. This is not a failure. It is the nature of experience itself. Living is not about possessing all the answers, but about learning to trust the process of discovery. The mind is built to learn, to adapt, to make sense of chaos after the fact. You grow not by avoiding mistakes, but by transforming them into wisdom. The price of this growth is the ache of hindsight, the knowledge that what is obvious now was once invisible. There is a deeper grace in learning to forgive yourself for what you did not know, for the clarity that came too late. The self is always unfolding, always becoming. The person you are now is not the person you were. Each stage of life is marked by its own blindness, its own form of ignorance. To expect perfection from the past is to deny your own humanity. The fog of the present is not a flaw, but a sign of aliveness. So what do you do with the gift of hindsight, knowing it arrives too late to change what matters? You use it to soften the present, to greet uncertainty with compassion, to allow yourself and others the dignity of imperfection. You recognize that every person, everywhere, is moving through their own fog, doing the best they can with what they have. Clarity will come. The story will make sense in time. Until then, the task is to keep moving, to keep choosing, to honor the journey. The paradox stands: if hindsight brings perfect vision, why is it always blind to the present? The answer is not meant to resolve, but to unsettle, to remind you that certainty is always a mirage, that wisdom is earned by walking through the darkness. Clarity is not a constant state, but a gift given by time and experience. Let yourself rest in this uncertainty. Welcome the fog as a companion, not an enemy. Trust that meaning will come, that understanding will unfold, that the story you are living will someday make sense. If not now, then in the future self who looks back with love. Now, as the mist of memory thickens and the ache of regret cools, another contradiction stirs. If choices are always collapsing into the present, what happens to the worlds that never made it? Next, we step into the question. Now that doors have closed, what happens to the worlds that will never be? Now that doors have closed, what happens to the worlds that will never be? A door swings shut. A moment passes. You walk forward, but a subtle silence echoes behind you. A hush for all that could have happened, but now will not. Every choice you make collapses a field of possibility into one tangible outcome, one line in the story of your life. The act feels final, yet in the shadows of the mind, the lost worlds linger. You wonder, where do they go? The career you almost pursued, the friendship never rekindled, the confession left unspoken, the alternate cities, the adventures, the risks untaken, they feel more than imaginary. For a brief moment, each was alive, a path as real as any you have walked. The moment you chose, those futures slipped away. Does their echo remain, or do they vanish, leaving no trace in the fabric of who you are? Science offers a strange perspective. At the smallest scales, the quantum world operates by collapse. A field of possibility, a wave, contracts the instant it is measured. All other potential realities dissolve, as if they never existed. But is this erasure, or only a folding into the deeper tapestry of what is? The mind, patterned after these same laws, cannot let go so easily. Unchosen possibilities become a haunting presence, a weight in the unconscious, a source of longing or regret. There is a peculiar grief here, as if every step forward is also a burial. Life demands commitment, the sacrifice of the infinite for the particular. In every relationship chosen, others are lost. In every identity forged, others are abandoned. The freedom to choose is bound to the inevitability of loss. You cannot live all your lives. You cannot open every door. The self is carved from what is left behind as much as from what is claimed. Yet the worlds that never were are not easily forgotten. They hover at the edge of perception, surfacing as daydreams, memories of something that never happened but feels strangely close. You might walk a city street and feel, for an instant, as if you've been there before, living another life. Or you hear a song and it awakens an inexplicable nostalgia. A longing for a time, a person, a self you never actually knew. The mind's hunger for possibility is both gift and torment. Imagination grants the power to envision, to invent, to hope. But it also sharpens the ache of what could have been. The alternate lives call out, their voices faint but persistent, asking for acknowledgement, for mourning, perhaps for gratitude. They are the children of your decisions, the roads that made you by remaining forever unwalked. What happens to these worlds when the door closes? Do they dissolve, forgotten by time and mind alike? Or do they persist, like ghost limbs, shaping the contours of your present in ways you cannot see? Psychologists suggest that the unconscious retains the imprint of unchosen futures. Regret, nostalgia, even unexpected bursts of creativity. These may be the echoes of lives unlived, possibilities not quite dead but folded into the complexity of who you are. There is a risk, of course, in lingering too long with the ghosts of choice. To grieve endlessly for what was never yours is to abandon the richness of what is. The present becomes a wasteland, haunted by shadows, emptied of meaning. The self fractures, lost in endless speculation, unable to rest. This is the danger of refusing to let the doors remain closed. Yet there is also wisdom in remembrance. The lost worlds teach humility, the recognition that your life is not inevitable, that every moment is shaped by the narrowing of infinity. They invite gratitude for what is and what is not, for the preciousness of the actual amid the vastness of the possible. They offer a bittersweet comfort, the assurance that you are more than any single story, that the fullness of who you are includes even the selves you never became. This tension cannot be resolved. To live is to accumulate absence as well as presence, to be shaped by what you do not choose as much as by what you do. The collapse of possibility is the cost of meaning. Every life is a monument to lost alternatives, a celebration of the particular carved from the raw material of the infinite. Sometimes, in dreams or moments of reverie, the lost worlds return. You glimpse yourself as you might have been, living a parallel existence, loving different people, facing different fears. The feeling is both comforting and unnerving, a reminder that the boundary between actual and possible is thin, easily crossed in the mind's theater. These visions do not diminish your present. They enrich it, giving depth and context, allowing you to appreciate the miracle of being here, now, walking this singular path. Art, too, is born from the collapse of possibility. The painting that emerges from 1,000 sketches, the poem chosen from 1,000 lines, the song that survives endless improvisation. Each is evidence that the world is shaped by what is left behind. The artist learns to grieve and celebrate simultaneously, to love what is without resenting what cannot be. In this way, creation and loss become intertwined, inseparable, each giving meaning to the other. To honor the worlds that never were is to honor yourself. You are not only the sum of your choices, but also the residue of what you surrendered. The pain of lost futures is proof of your capacity to dream, to imagine, to desire. The wisdom is in learning when to look back, and when to let go, when to visit the graves of the possible, and when to bless the ground beneath your feet. Let the question remain, unclosed. Now that doors have closed, what happens to the worlds that will never be? The answer is not a matter of fact, but of feeling, a recognition that the shadow of the infinite will always accompany the particular. The present is precious precisely because it is carved from so much loss. As you rest in this awareness, another paradox stirs. If your mind is built to mourn, to imagine, to regret, is it possible that suffering is not an accident, but a design? If you're built for regret, can you ever hack your own mind to escape? Next, we confront the machinery of the regretful brain and the possibility of rewriting its rules. If you're built for regret, can you ever hack your own mind to escape? A decision is made. The future becomes the present, then the past. Almost instantly, a new process begins, a silent recalibration, a search for what was gained and what was lost. Sometimes there's satisfaction, even relief, but just as often, a new ache appears. Regret rises, unbidden and precise, whispering how things could have been better, how happiness slipped through your fingers, how the fault lies somewhere within. Is this suffering just bad luck? An accident of experience, a cultural artifact, an error in upbringing? Or does it run deeper, stitched into the very design of the human mind? The question unsettles because to contemplate it is to sense that regret is not merely a glitch but a feature, a program running beneath the surface, older than language, more tenacious than logic. Neuroscience tells a strange, troubling story. The brain is an engine of comparison, forever measuring what is against what might have been. After every choice, the mind generates counterfactuals, alternate scenarios, lost opportunities, different outcomes. It is as if the mind cannot help but conjure parallel worlds, evaluating them as rigorously as reality itself. Regret is not just an emotion, it is a calculation, a weighing of actual versus possible, a constant, involuntary cost-benefit analysis. Evolution may offer a grim answer for why this is so. Regret is adaptive. It sharpens learning, engraves lessons in the nervous system, teaches caution where boldness once failed. The pain of past mistakes urges future avoidance. Those who could not feel regret, who blithely repeated errors, did not survive. Over time, the species selected for minds that remember, compare, and mourn. The result is a brain exquisitely tuned for suffering, a machine that finds the flaw even in victory, the shadow in every light. This machinery is powerful but perilous. In a world where mistakes are costly, regret is wisdom's cruel tutor. But in the complexity of modern life, where choices multiply and their consequences are less clear, regret becomes less a teacher and more a tormentor. The mind, awash in infinite options, generates an equally infinite supply of possible failures. Every unchosen path is a reason to suffer. Every outcome is measured against a standard that keeps shifting, receding, disappearing into the fog. You sense it in daily life. The small regrets, the careless word, the missed opportunity, the meal ordered when you should have tried something else. And the larger ones, the job not taken, the relationship ended too soon or too late, the dream set aside for safety or approval. The mind is tireless, ingenious in its ability to generate reasons for sorrow, even in the midst of success. Sometimes, it seems that suffering is the brain's baseline, a default state, a shadow that lengthens as the sun of possibility rises. But is this truly your destiny? Are you fated to suffer, wired to regret, condemned to mourn every outcome, no matter how hard you try to do otherwise? The question pierces because it asks whether happiness is even possible, or just a brief pause in a cycle of disappointment. Some seek to hack the system, to trick the mind, to retrain the machinery. Practices of gratitude, mindfulness, positive psychology all attempt to rewire the brain's attention, shifting focus from what is lost to what is gained, from what might have been to what is. These practices work, but only up to a point. The regret machine is persistent, ingenious, always looking for a crack in the armor of contentment. Others turn to distraction, numbing, or the relentless pursuit of novelty. If regret cannot be erased, perhaps it can be outrun. But this too has limits. The mind follows you, bringing the echo of lost possibilities wherever you go. Even in moments of joy, the shadow of "it could have been better" slips in, dimming the light, stealing a fraction of what is precious. There is a radical path, offered by some ancient traditions and echoed in the findings of neuroscience. Acceptance. To make peace with the machinery itself, to witness the mind generating regret without fully believing its stories. To recognize that the calculation is flawed, not because it is always wrong, but because it is always incomplete. The mind compares what is to what could have been, but it can never know the full shape of those lost worlds, the total cost or benefit of what did not happen. The math is impossible, the ledger infinite, the judgment always partial. In this light, regret becomes not an enemy, but a companion. A signal that you cared, that you risked, that you are awake to possibility. The mind will always compare, always mourn, always wonder. But you are not the machinery. You are the witness to it. You can notice the ache, let it rise and fall, and remember that suffering is only one note in the vast music of your being. Can the mind be truly hacked, rewired to escape suffering entirely? The evidence is mixed. Some find lasting peace in acceptance, others in reframing, others in deepening compassion. There is no final escape, only greater skill in navigating the landscape of regret. The machine runs, but it can be observed, gently redirected, even, sometimes, made quiet by love or wonder or deep presence. This is the paradox. The mind is built to suffer, but also to heal, to reimagine, to transcend. You are the product of a million regrets, yours and the ancestors whose sorrow shaped your genes. Yet you are also the creator of new meanings, the author of new stories, the voice that says enough to the cycle of comparison. Suffering is real, but it is not the whole truth. Let the question linger. If you're built for regret, can you ever hack your own mind to escape? The answer is not binary, not a switch to flip, but a path to walk. The mind will compare, will ache, will grieve. But you are not doomed. You are more than your machinery, more than the sum of missed opportunities. Every moment of compassion, every act of forgiveness, every pause to savor the present is a quiet rebellion, a refusal to let suffering have the last word. Now, with the regret machine exposed and its rules revealed, a new riddle arises. If the present can change your perspective on the past, is it possible for today's choices to ripple backward in time? Next, we explore the puzzle of reverse causality. If the present rewrites the meaning of every memory, do your choices echo backwards through time? If the present rewrites the meaning of every memory, do your choices echo backwards through time? There's a strange gravity to memory, a sense that the past is fixed, unreachable, locked behind a veil that nothing can penetrate. You are taught that what is done, decisions made, words spoken, mistakes committed. The arrow of time, you are told, points in only one direction, forward. The past is a landscape you can revisit, but never change. Yet life defies this simple logic. Memory is not a stone monument, but a living garden. Each day, you return to old scenes, old choices, old wounds, and discover that what you find there is not always what you left. The colors shift, the shadows lengthen or fade. The mood alters with the weather of the present. The mind, it turns out, is not a historian, but a storyteller, endlessly revising, editing, and reshaping the narrative to fit the self you are now. The quantum world hints at even stranger possibilities. Time, at its deepest level, is not an inviolable law, but a relationship, a pattern that can be stretched, tangled, even reversed. In certain experiments, the choice of how to measure a particle seems to reach backward, rewriting the conditions of the past, as if the act of observation reverberates through history, echoing before it even happens. What does this mean for you, living in the river of time? Can the decisions you make today ripple backward, changing the meaning or even the reality of what has already happened? The answer is both unsettling and liberating, for it suggests that the past is never truly finished, never beyond the reach of new meaning, new perspective, new forgiveness. Consider a memory of failure, a moment that once defined you with shame or disappointment. At the time, it may have seemed catastrophic, a rupture that shaped every decision after. Yet years later, you look back and see something different. Perhaps it was the catalyst for growth, the origin of strength or compassion you could not have otherwise known. The memory does not change in its facts, but its meaning is transformed. What was once a curse becomes a blessing. What was once a wound becomes a source of wisdom. This is not merely a psychological trick, but a fundamental property of consciousness. The mind is always making sense of what has happened, integrating the past with the present, assigning new significance as understanding grows. In this way, your present choices, the way you live, the values you adopt, the forgiveness you offer, reach back and illuminate the shadows of memory, rewriting the story from a new vantage. The phenomenon is especially visible in relationships. An apology, a reunion, a letter written years later can change the entire shape of a memory. The sting of betrayal is softened by forgiveness. The ache of loss is colored by gratitude. Even the words you speak to yourself, the private rituals of acceptance or release, can transform what once felt permanent. The past is not a prison. It is a canvas, painted and repainted as you grow. Yet the paradox cuts both ways. The past can also intrude upon the present, bringing old meanings, old wounds, old patterns that constrain what is possible now. The mind, trained by experience, reacts not only to what is happening, but to what has already happened, a reflexive echo that shapes perception, emotion, and choice. In this sense, the boundaries between past and present dissolve. Each influences the other. Each is incomplete without the ongoing work of interpretation. The ability to rewrite the past is both a danger and a gift. It can be used to evade responsibility, to gloss over mistakes, to rewrite history in self-serving ways. But it can also be a source of healing, allowing the self to escape the tyranny of old stories, to choose a new identity, to claim the power of reinterpretation. The challenge is to walk the line between honesty and hope, to see clearly what happened while allowing for the possibility of redemption. Can you really change the past? Not in the sense of altering events, but in the deeper sense of changing the meaning those events hold. Every new decision, every act of courage or kindness, sends ripples backward through your history, recasting moments of pain as seeds of growth, mistakes as invitations to humility, regret as a pathway to compassion. The meaning of your life is not fixed at any point. It is an evolving story, rewritten with every breath. Some moments are harder to reclaim. Trauma, betrayal, loss. These carve deep grooves in memory, resistant to easy revision. Yet even here, the work of reinterpretation is possible. Therapy, ritual, time, and love can soften the sharp edges, allowing new meanings to emerge. The past, though never erased, is made lighter, more bearable, sometimes even beautiful in its resilience. This is not an invitation to denial or self-deception. It is an invitation to agency, the recognition that you are not merely the product of what has happened, but also the author of what it means. The arrow of time may move forward, but the story it writes is circular, recursive, endlessly revised. Notice, too, how the present is shaped by imagined futures, as well as remembered pasts. You live not only with what has happened, but with what might still occur. The mind, poised between memory and anticipation, is always reaching in both directions. Editing, preparing, reinterpreting. The quantum strangeness is not just a property of particles, but a property of being human, the capacity to change the past by the choices you make today. Let this paradox rest gently. If the present rewrites the meaning of every memory, do your choices echo backwards through time? The answer is not final, not a solution, but an ongoing invitation. Each day, you are offered the chance to re-enter the story, to soften the hardness of regret, to claim the freedom to change what your life has meant, even as you accept what cannot be changed. In this, there is hope. The past is not a cage, but a garden. It waits for new seeds, for the light of new understanding, for the gentle rain of forgiveness. You cannot undo what has happened, but you can decide, today, what it means, and that meaning will echo backward, touching every moment that brought you here. Now, as the paradox of time unfolds, another riddle rises. If your mind can rewrite the story of wounds never suffered, what does it mean when you feel pain for what never was? Next, we face the enigma of phantom suffering. Now that your mind invents stories, can you trust any of your suffering? Now that your mind invents stories, can you trust any of your suffering? A pain flickers through your chest. Not sharp, not physical, but unmistakably real. It rises when you least expect it. At the sight of an old photograph, a word overheard, a moment of silence when the mind drifts. Sometimes the source is obvious. A memory, a heartbreak, a disappointment. Other times, the pain seems untethered, floating without cause, as if conjured by imagination alone. It is phantom pain, the ache of wounds you never suffered, the grief of losses that never occurred. Why does this happen? How can the mind manufacture suffering out of thin air, painting bruises on a body unstruck, raising scars where there was no injury? The answer is as unsettling as it is revealing. Your mind is not a perfect recorder of reality, but a restless creator, inventing, rehearsing, anticipating, remembering not only what was, but what could have been. The machinery that helps you navigate danger and longing is also the machinery that can torment you with visions of suffering that exist only as stories. Science has a name for the most vivid version of this mystery: phantom limb pain. A limb is lost, yet the nerves fire. The brain insists on the reality of fingers, toes, movement, agony. The body grieves for something gone, but the mind refuses to accept absence. The wound is both real and imaginary, a map of pain etched on a landscape that no longer exists. Yet, phantom pain is not only for amputees. All minds are susceptible to it. The heart mourns relationships that never began, opportunities never taken, futures that never came to pass. The mind replays arguments that never happened, relives tragedies only imagined, aches for a self that was never allowed to exist. Your suffering is not only a response to life, but a response to possibility, to the infinite branches of what if. Imagination, so often celebrated as the source of creativity, is also the architect of suffering. The mind, in its attempt to predict and prepare, runs endless simulations, testing outcomes, rehearsing dangers, exploring sorrows before they ever arrive. These imagined scenarios, when charged with emotion, leave real traces in the brain and body. The body cannot distinguish between what is vividly imagined and what is actually lived. The heart races, the stomach clenches, tears rise. Not only for the real, but for the almost real, the might have been. This is the gift and curse of being human. To suffer not only for yourself, but for others, for strangers, for the characters in a story, for the futures that might yet unfold. Empathy itself is a form of phantom pain, the ability to feel another's sorrow as your own, to ache for a wound that has not yet or may never arrive. Compassion and anxiety, creativity and dread. These are twins, born of the same capacity to imagine suffering beyond the borders of immediate experience. But if the mind can invent pain, can you trust any of your suffering? The question is sharp, even dangerous. It calls into doubt the authenticity of emotion, the legitimacy of feeling. Yet to dismiss pain as mere illusion is itself a form of cruelty. All pain, imagined or real, is felt. The ache of loss, whether for a real love or a phantom one, demands tenderness. The mind's power to create suffering is evidence not of weakness, but of sensitivity, of the depth and reach of your own aliveness. There is a danger, though, in becoming trapped by phantom pain. The mind, caught in cycles of anxiety or rumination, can create wounds that fester, narratives that tighten and close, suffering that multiplies without end. The risk is living in a hall of mirrors, haunted by injuries that no act or apology could ever heal, because they are rooted not in the world but in the restless potential of the mind. How, then, do you live with a mind capable of inventing pain? The answer is not to try to police every thought, to root out every fantasy of suffering. Instead, the invitation is to witness, to recognize the source of pain, to honor its feeling, but also to ask gently, is this wound real, or is it the echo of a story, a rehearsal for a world that never arrived? The question is not meant to dismiss, but to bring awareness, to remind you that not every ache is a call to action, not every sorrow a truth to be obeyed. This is the work of self-compassion, to allow suffering even when it seems irrational, to offer kindness even to the parts of yourself that invent pain, to treat the imagined wound with the same gentleness as the real one, knowing that both are evidence of your deep engagement with life. The mind's stories can wound, but they can also heal. Imagination can craft new narratives, new futures, new meanings. The same machinery that generates phantom pain is capable of summoning hope, joy, connection, laughter. Real feelings born of unreal beginnings. But there is a further paradox. If your mind can conjure pain from nothing, how much of your suffering is truly yours? How much is inherited, absorbed, shaped by stories told by family, culture, history, generational trauma, collective anxiety, shared myths? These too leave marks. Sometimes, the pain you feel is not your own, but an echo of voices long gone, or a whisper from a future you will never live. The self is porous. Pain travels through time and space, lodging in the heart with or without permission. To recognize this is not to diminish suffering, but to understand its complexity. Your pain, real or imagined, connects you to the world, to others, to the vast network of longing and loss that makes up the human story. Phantom pain is not only a wound, but a bridge, a way of being in relationship with all that is possible, all that has been lost, all that might yet come to be. Let the question stand, sharp and unresolved. Now that your mind invents stories, can you trust any of your suffering? The answer is both yes and no. Trust the feeling, but inquire into its source. Offer compassion, but remain curious. Suffering is both signal and illusion, both real and imagined, both wound and wisdom. Rest in the knowledge that to be alive is to be vulnerable to pain, both real and phantom. The mind, in its brilliance and its madness, will always create stories, will always ache for what is lost and what has never been. The challenge is not to end suffering, but to understand it, to meet it with gentleness, to allow it to deepen your empathy rather than your fear. Now, as the echoes of phantom pain fade, another paradox rises to the surface. If every hesitation hides a secret, every pause protects a truth, what is your mind truly shielding with indecision? Next, we venture into the shadows and ask, if every hesitation hides a truth, what are you afraid to discover about yourself? If every hesitation hides a truth, what are you afraid to discover about yourself? In the silent spaces between impulse and action, a question hovers, a presence you rarely meet head-on. You hesitate, feeling the familiar tug-of-war within. Should you act or wait? Should you speak or swallow your words? Should you stay where it's safe or risk stepping into the unknown? The mind labels these moments indecision, and the world judges them as weakness, delay, even cowardice. But what if your hesitation is not merely a lack of clarity or will, but a mask for something deeper? A secret hidden even from your conscious self. Every pause is a doorway, and every doorway conceals a shadow. Behind indecision lies a question you're not ready to answer, a truth you're not ready to see. It might be a longing you have suppressed, a memory you cannot bear, a desire that feels too dangerous, too bold, too far from the person you're supposed to be. Indecision is rarely about the options on the table. It is about the unspoken stakes beneath them. There is a part of the mind that guards these secrets, a silent warden, vigilant and creative. It knows what is at risk if you choose wrongly. Not just disappointment, but exposure, vulnerability, a shattering of the story you have carefully constructed about who you are. It is easier to hesitate, to run simulations, to weigh pros and cons endlessly, than to face the possibility that the choice itself would force you to reckon with a truth you've hidden, perhaps for years. What are these truths, these shadows that indecision shields? Sometimes they are small, the admission of envy, the hunger for approval, the secret wish to be elsewhere. Sometimes they are vast, the memory of a past betrayal, the ache of a dream you've declared dead but still mourn, the knowledge that the life you are living is not truly your own. These truths are not always dark. Some are bright with possibility, radiant with joy, but frightening nonetheless because they would require you to change. The shadow self is not the enemy. It is the part of you that holds what cannot be spoken, what cannot be risked, what cannot be lost. It is born of love and fear in equal measure, the love of safety, the fear of rejection, the longing to belong. You hesitate not only because you cannot decide, but because, on some subterranean level, that deciding might mean confronting what you've spent a lifetime avoiding. To meet your shadow is to risk undoing the boundaries of the self you've built. The safe, coherent identity, the story you tell yourself and others, depends on keeping certain truths at bay. Indecision becomes a kind of armor, a space in which the truth can remain both present and unacknowledged, alive but unclaimed. Yet, the cost of this protection is steep. Every act of avoidance splits you further from yourself. The secret, left unspoken, grows heavier. The shadow, left unseen, grows larger. Your energy is consumed not by the decision itself, but by the effort to remain blind to what is truly at stake. The longer you wait, the more the secret festers, the more the shadow feeds, the more the act of choosing becomes impossible. What are you afraid to discover about yourself? The answer changes with each person, each moment, each threshold. It might be the realization that you are more selfish than you thought, or more generous, more wounded, more ambitious, more lost. It might be the knowledge that you are capable of betrayal, or that you are worthy of more love than you allow yourself to receive. The shadow is not a single thing, but a shifting landscape, mapped by the places you dare not look. To pierce the armor of indecision is to risk exposure. The mind resists for good reason. Evolution favors safety, the maintenance of the known. But growth lives in the cracks, the places where comfort breaks down, where the old story no longer fits. Every moment of hesitation is an opportunity, a chance to listen for the secret, to feel the weight of the unspoken, to invite the shadow into the light. Some traditions teach that the path to freedom is not in banishing the shadow, but in integrating it, learning to speak its language, to honor its wisdom, to recognize that what you most fear is often what you most need. The secret behind your indecision may be the key to your becoming. It may contain the next chapter of your story, the breakthrough that changes everything. But there is no guarantee of comfort. To face the shadow is to risk unraveling, to lose your footing, to find that what you have avoided is both more terrifying and more beautiful than you imagined. The mind resists, offering every excuse, every distraction, every justification for waiting. Yet, the longing for wholeness persists, drawing you toward the truth beneath the pause. Let the paradox stand. If every hesitation hides a truth, what are you afraid to discover about yourself? The answer is not meant to soothe, but to stir, to awaken the courage to turn toward the shadow, to ask what it wants, what it fears, what it protects. Your indecision is not your enemy. It is your invitation. As you breathe into the space between impulses, notice the contours of the secret that waits for you. It is not always darkness. Sometimes the shadow conceals a desire too bold to be spoken, a hope too fragile to risk, a joy too overwhelming to claim. The shadow is not only pain. It is potential, the seed of what you might yet become. Meeting the shadow is the work of a lifetime. Each decision, each hesitation, each moment of self-questioning is another invitation to dig deeper, to listen more closely, to honor the complexity of your inner world. The truth will not destroy you. It will remake you if you let it. Now, as you stand at the threshold of revelation, another paradox arises. If completing something, finally deciding, finally acting, feels more frightening than failing or waiting, what is really at stake? Next, we enter the territory of finality and ask, now that you're close to a decision, why does the end feel scarier than the unknown? Now that you're close to a decision, why does the end feel scarier than the unknown? You edge toward the finish line, breath held, nerves tight. After all the waiting, doubting, circling, and preparing, the final step looms before you. A last stroke of the pen, a last spoken word, a leap into commitment. And suddenly, a new fear blooms where relief should be. The dread is visceral. Each fiber of your being tenses, not against failure, but against completion itself. The question rises, cold and sharp. Why does ending what you started provoke more terror than never beginning at all? The world teaches you to fear failure, to brace against disappointment, to measure success by outcomes achieved. But beneath this is a subtler, deeper anxiety. The anxiety of finishing, of seeing the story closed, the possibility gone, the decision made. While uncertainty is exhausting, it remains oddly safe. As long as you are still deciding, anything is possible. No dream has been tested, no path fully claimed. The field of possibility, though torturous, is a sanctuary from finality. Completion is a line you cannot uncross. Once the decision is made, the future contracts to a single outcome. The myriad of alternate lives, paths, and endings collapse into one reality, hard and inescapable. You are no longer becoming, you have become. In this moment, you face not only the risk of regret, but the weight of irreversibility. The freedom of infinite futures is gone. Only the truth of this one remains. This dread is more than simple perfectionism, more than a fear of judgment or being not good enough. It is a fundamental confrontation with your own limits of time, identity, and possibility. To finish is to accept that some potential will never be realized, some doors will never open, some selves will never emerge. It is an act of self-definition that necessarily means self-denial. You cannot be everything, you must be someone. There is also the strange grief of leaving the creative tension behind. While the work is unfinished, while the choice is unmade, you are suspended in a state of creative uncertainty. The project, the relationship, the dream remains alive, breathing possibility with every heartbeat. Once you finish, it is over. The story is no longer yours to shape. You become a witness to what you have made, not its author. Completion reveals you to yourself. It is the moment of truth, when intention is tested against reality, when desire meets consequence, when fantasy hardens into fact. This exposure can feel unbearable. While you are still in the process, you can always imagine that the outcome will match the dream. But to finish is to risk disappointment, to face the imperfections of what you have created. It is to know, finally and irrevocably, what your efforts amount to. Yet, there is a deeper layer still. Finishing means relinquishing control. The project is submitted, the decision made, the words spoken. You step back and the world responds, not as you wish but as it will. The unknown becomes known, and in that knowing, you lose the ability to revise, to edit, to keep hoping for a different result. The end, once reached, is permanent. For some, this terror is paralyzing. Projects remain unfinished. Relationships linger unresolved. Dreams are endlessly postponed. The last 5%, the act of completion, becomes an impossible hurdle. Better to dwell in endless becoming than to face the loneliness of being finished. Better to risk never knowing than to risk knowing once and for all. But what is lost in this refusal to finish? The energy of potential becomes stagnant, turning to anxiety, frustration, and self-doubt. The mind replays the loop endlessly, longing for closure yet resisting it. Life becomes a landscape of half-built bridges, half-written letters, half-lived days. The cost of avoiding completion is the loss of satisfaction, the inability to rest, the erosion of confidence. Yet, the dread of finishing is not wholly irrational. It is a testament to the depth of your longing, the seriousness with which you approach your own existence. To finish is to risk the greatest heartbreak. The heartbreak of meeting yourself in the mirror of your own effort and knowing, at last, what you are and what you are not. It is a sacred vulnerability, a willingness to step out of the fog and into the light, with all its harshness and all its beauty. To meet this dread is an act of courage. It means accepting the loss that comes with every gain, the imperfection that shadows every achievement, the silence that follows every song. It means recognizing that endings are not failures, but necessary conclusions, thresholds to new beginnings, invitations to rest and renewal. Completion, like birth and death, is an essential rhythm of being alive. It is a moment of clarity, a reckoning, a coming home to yourself. The end is not an enemy, but a teacher. It shows you who you have become and invites you to honor what is, rather than what might have been. But this lesson cannot be forced or rushed. The mind, shaped by infinite possibility, needs time to grieve the loss of all it will never know. The heart needs gentleness to accept the truth of what it has made. The dread of finishing is not a flaw, but a threshold, a place where the soul pauses, breathes, and prepares to cross into the next unknown. Let the paradox remain. Now that you're close to a decision, why does the end feel scarier than the unknown? The answer is not to be resolved, but respected. Completion is both death and birth, closure and opening, loss and liberation. The self that hesitates is the self that loves, that dreams, that longs to become more than it is. As you stand at the edge of the finish line, trembling with the weight of what is at stake, notice the wisdom in your fear. It is telling you that you care, that you are alive to the miracle of choice, that you understand, perhaps more deeply than you admit, the cost and beauty of completion. Now, with the taste of finality lingering on your tongue, another paradox arises. If every decision destroys infinite futures, how can you take a single step without the terror of annihilating worlds? Next, we face the ultimate quantum challenge and ask, if one act destroys infinite futures, how can you step forward without annihilating worlds? If one act destroys infinite futures, how can you step forward without annihilating worlds? Choice is an act of destruction. Each time you move, speak, decide, you cleave reality into one, collapsing a shimmering field of infinite futures into a single, unyielding now. The quantum world is not just a metaphor here. It is a silent law beneath your every action. The wave of potential, alive with countless possibilities, folds itself down to a point. The choice made, the path walked, the rest left to darkness. The other worlds, those branching, trembling futures, are erased, not by accident, but by your own hand. This knowledge is a burden. It turns every crossroad into a scene of violence, every act of becoming into an act of annihilation. You want to believe that choice is additive, that each step builds on what came before, that the future is a garden you cultivate. But the truth is sharper. Each step forward is also a burial, a closing of doors you can never open again, a sacrifice of every life you might have lived for the sake of the one you will. You sense this every time you hesitate, your hand hovering above a button, your voice caught in your throat. The mind races through scenarios, tracing the shape of what might be gained, but also what must be lost. Commitment is a form of grief, an acceptance that some futures must die so that this one can be born. The deeper the choice, the more you feel the weight, not only of what you desire, but of all the selves you abandon with a single act. What gives you the right to erase so much possibility? What faith must you have in yourself to step forward, knowing the price? The question haunts every act of courage, every leap into love, every irrevocable word. It is not only regret that follows, but awe, a trembling before the power you wield, the power to make and unmake the world with your decisions. There is no comfort in numbers. No matter how many times you choose, the field of possibility is never replenished. Every new path consumes a forest of alternatives. You may tell yourself that you can return, undo, retrace, but this is an illusion. Time's arrow moves only forward. The door you closed has vanished. The life you did not live is as unreachable as a star gone dark. And yet, to refuse the collapse is its own kind of destruction. Hesitation preserves possibility only in theory. In practice, it is a form of paralysis, a living death. The wave remains uncollapsed, but so do you, neither here nor there, unable to become anything at all. The cost of infinite futures is the loss of the present. The price of keeping doors open is that you never step through any. There is an ancient terror here, woven into the architecture of choice. The myth of perfection, the longing for certainty, the fear of error, all are strategies to avoid the pain of erasure. But the quantum world is indifferent to perfection. This law is simple: to know, you must choose. To exist, you must collapse. To love, you must let other loves go. Life is not a rehearsal. It is a sequence of irrevocable acts. Some seek to escape this burden by denying their own agency, by letting others decide, by following routines, by numbing the ache with distraction. But the collapse comes regardless. The wave must fall, the future must shrink, the cost must be paid. Even passivity is a choice, even silence is a door closing, even non-action is a kind of annihilation. Yet, within this devastation, a strange grace emerges. The collapse of possibility is not only an ending, but a birth. The field narrows, but meaning grows. The sacrifice of infinite futures is what gives depth to the single present. The self is shaped not by the sum of what it might have been, but by the courage to claim what it is. The value of a life is not in its hypothetical abundance, but in its actual content, the texture of choices made, the clarity of roads walked, the richness of what is lived and known. To step forward, knowing the cost, is an act of faith, a trust that what is gained is worth more than what is lost. This faith is not certainty. It is a trembling, a willingness to be wounded, to accept the wound as the price of reality. The act of choice is always an act of surrender, a letting go of everything you cannot keep, a blessing of the one thing you can. How, then, do you bear the burden? By honoring what you destroy, by grieving what you leave behind, by letting the ache of the lost futures deepen your gratitude for the one you claim. The collapse of the wave is not a tragedy, but a necessity, a gift you give yourself, the only way to move from possibility into presence. The paradox will never resolve. If one act destroys infinite futures, how can you step forward without annihilating worlds? The answer is that you cannot. The worlds will fall, the doors will close, the wave will collapse. But in that collapse, you are born anew, a single, trembling self, alive at the point where the possible becomes the real. Rest in the ache, the awe, the sorrow. Let yourself feel the magnitude of your own agency, the price of your own existence. Know that you are not alone. Every life is shaped by these silent annihilations. Every soul is haunted by what it has not become. The courage to choose is the courage to accept both loss and liberation, to bless the wave as it collapses, to step forward into the narrowing beam of now. And as the present sharpens, as you become more yourself and less every other possibility, another riddle arises. If your best choices are made without your conscious intervention, is it really you who decides? Next, we step into the hidden machinery of decision and ask, if you make your most crucial choices unconsciously, can you ever really claim responsibility? If you make your most crucial choices unconsciously, can you ever really claim responsibility? The story of free will feels central to the modern mind. You imagine yourself as the conscious architect of every turn and pivot in your life, a rational, deliberate decision-maker who weighs options, considers consequences, and then acts. This story is comforting. It grants you agency, dignity, a sense of authorship over your own fate. But beneath the story, a stranger truth flickers, a truth the mind resists and science confirms. Many of your most decisive moments, your life-altering leaps and sudden turns, happen beneath the surface, out of sight, before you are even aware a choice is being made. Neuroscience has tracked the signature of decision-making deep in the brain, watching as electrical waves surge and synapses fire milliseconds, or even seconds, before the conscious mind declares, "I have chosen." By the time you know, the choice has already begun. The feeling of agency is real, but its timing is suspect. You are both the author and the audience, both instigator and observer, caught in the mystery of who is really steering the ship. You see the evidence in daily life. Words tumble out in conversation before you think them. You turn down a street, drawn by some hunch, only later inventing a reason for why you went that way. You feel an impulse to reach out to a friend or to step away from a situation, and the rationalization follows, retrofitting logic onto an act that was already underway. You tell yourself stories about your motives, about weighing the options, but often you are simply explaining a process that happened without your supervision. This realization is both liberating and terrifying. If your best decisions arise from somewhere deeper, what does it mean to claim them as yours? If the machinery of the self acts before you can intervene, how can you trust yourself or take credit or bear the blame? Are you the master of your fate or the witness to a fate already unfolding? Some traditions teach that the conscious mind is only the tip of the iceberg, a tiny flicker on the vast ocean of the unconscious. The deeper self, shaped by memory, instinct, intuition, and 1,000 patterns learned and forgotten, guides the hand while the spotlight of attention chases after, trying to keep up. The sense of being in control is a narrative pasted on after the fact, a necessary fiction perhaps, but a fiction nonetheless. The quantum world, again, offers a metaphor. The act of observing changes the system. The wave collapses not just by measurement, but by the demand for certainty. So too with the self. The more intently you try to watch and control your decisions, the more distorted they become. Authenticity, creativity, wisdom, all these flourish in the moments when you stop micromanaging, when you trust the deeper machinery to guide you through complexity. But this trust is hard-won. The mind wants to control, to predict, to claim authorship over every outcome. It resists the idea that the real work happens out of sight, that your best moves might come when you are looking away. It feels threatening to admit that you are not fully in charge, that there is a silent saboteur or perhaps a silent genius within you, making choices while your conscious mind narrates a story of control. Still, the evidence accumulates. The most inspired creative breakthroughs happen in moments of play, rest, or distraction, not in forced effort. Decisions made in the gut, without endless overthinking, are often wiser than those tortured into being. The great leaps, falling in love, taking a risk, changing direction, are remembered as choices, but are lived as sudden turns, eruptions from the depths. What you call intuition is the expression of a mind that has learned far more than you can name, a self that carries forward the wisdom of countless experiences, both yours and those who came before you. Does this mean you bear no responsibility? That the self is an illusion, the conscious mind a passenger on a runaway train? Not quite. To be aware of the unconscious is not to be powerless. You can train the machinery, feed it new patterns, expose it to beauty and meaning, shape it with intention, even if you cannot direct every step. You are gardener and garden, sculptor and stone, both shaping and shaped, but the myth of total control falls away. What emerges is a gentler, humbler form of responsibility. You are not the omnipotent ruler, but the attentive steward, guiding where you can, accepting mystery where you cannot. The best decisions are made with less interference, not more. The more you try to micromanage, the more brittle and anxious your life becomes. The more you trust, the more gracefully the self adapts, improvises, survives. There is a danger here, of course, in using the unconscious as an excuse, in abdicating responsibility for the harm you cause or the patterns you repeat. But the deeper wisdom is not abdication, but curiosity, a willingness to learn from the silent saboteur, to ask what is being protected, what is being pursued, what is trying to emerge from below. Self-reflection is still essential. It simply moves from the fantasy of total control to the reality of influence and dialogue between parts of the self. So let the paradox remain. If you make your most crucial choices unconsciously, can you ever really claim responsibility? The answer is both yes and no. You are the author and the witness, the decider and the decided, the hand and the hidden force behind it. Responsibility lives in how you respond to what arises, in how you learn from the patterns you did not consciously choose, in the humility with which you approach the ongoing mystery of yourself. Rest in the uncertainty. Allow yourself to trust the deeper layers of mind. Know that the best of you often acts when you're not watching, and that the conscious self is a narrator, not a dictator. The beauty and terror of being human is that you are both guided and guiding, both driven and driving, both asleep and awake within your own becoming. Now, as the mechanics of decision slip beneath the surface, another paradox sharpens its teeth. If an action is also a choice, one that sometimes carries more weight than action itself, what is the true cost of not choosing? Next, we turn to the violence of waiting and ask, now that you know action creates regret, what if inaction destroys even more? Now that you know action creates regret, what if inaction destroys even more? There's a comfort in waiting. You can let time pass, watch options drift by, feel the world move without making your mark. Non-action feels safe, a refusal to risk, a pause before the fall, a chance to gather more evidence before a leap. When you're trapped between fears, between the regret of choosing wrong and the pain of closing doors, doing nothing becomes a refuge, a silent place where possibility remains untouched and failure is kept at bay. But this quiet is deceptive. Inaction is not neutral. Every day you wait, every silence you maintain, every path you refuse to walk is itself a choice, a line drawn in the sand of your life. You tell yourself you are avoiding harm, escaping regret, sparing yourself the pain of missteps. Yet the cost of doing nothing is never nothing. Sometimes it is everything. The violence of inaction is subtle. It does not announce itself with drama or spectacle. It moves quietly, reshaping lives by omission. Relationships drift into silence. Dreams decay in neglected corners. Truths go unspoken until they become secrets you can barely bear. The world does not pause for your uncertainty. It fills the space you leave with its own momentum, and the life you refuse to claim is claimed by entropy, by others' choices, by the slow, relentless passage of time. The mind resists this reality. It is easier to measure the wounds of action, the mistakes, the heartbreaks, the words you wish you could take back. These are visible, concrete, easy to blame. But the wounds of inaction are ghosts. They live in the life unlived, the love undeclared, the change unattempted. The pain is quieter, but it is no less real. It accumulates in the form of regrets that have no name, losses that can never be fully mourned. Why is doing nothing sometimes more destructive than risking everything? Because inaction masquerades as patience, as wisdom, as caution. It hides behind rationalizations. I'll decide tomorrow. I need more time. Things will get better on their own. But beneath these reasons often lies fear, the fear of being seen, of being wrong, of losing the safety of possibility. The risk you think you're avoiding is simply transformed into a different kind of loss, one that steals from the inside out. Inaction is seductive because it lets you delay the reckoning. As long as you have not chosen, you cannot fail. The dreams stay whole in your imagination, unsullied by reality's disappointments. But the price is heavy. A slow drift from yourself, a numbness that grows as the years pass, a sense that life is moving on without you. The regret of action is sharp but finite. The regret of inaction is diffuse, endless, difficult to escape. There are moments in every life when not acting is the bravest choice, when waiting is wise, when silence protects, when withdrawal preserves the soul. But more often, the violence of doing nothing is disguised as peace. It is a form of self-erasure, a way to avoid confrontation with the truth, a refusal to take responsibility for shaping your own existence. Non-decisions do not absolve you, they define you. Inaction is not an escape from regret, but its breeding ground. The mind may tell you that you have time, that opportunities will return, that the moment is not yet right. Sometimes this is true. More often, it is a trick, another way to pass the burden to your future self, to live in the illusion of infinite possibility while the clock runs out. The violence comes later, as the unlived life demands its due, as the chorus of what-ifs swells in your chest. You see this everywhere. In the friendship left to fade, the job you never applied for, the apology you never offered, the boundary you never set. Each act of omission leaves a mark, a subtle shift in the trajectory of your life. The world does not notice, but you do. The cost is invisible to others, but you carry it, a weight you can't quite name. Why is non-action sometimes more violent than action? Because it is insidious. It operates beneath awareness, convincing you that by not choosing, you remain whole, undamaged, untouched by the chaos of the world. In truth, you are shaped as much by the choices you refuse to make as by those you embrace. Your silence echoes, your passivity accumulates, your fear of regret becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You become not the author of your story, but a character swept along by other people's plots. Yet, the paradox is not an invitation to reckless action, to choosing for the sake of choosing, to jumping without looking. The violence of inaction is not always solved by its opposite. Sometimes, the bravest thing is to sit with the discomfort, to watch your own fear, to wait for the deeper answer to emerge. But waiting is not the same as avoidance. To wait consciously is to choose presence, to accept uncertainty, to honor your own process. To wait unconsciously is to drift, to surrender to entropy, to let your life shrink rather than expand. How can you tell the difference? The answer is written in the body, in the way your heart responds to the thought of action or inaction. The fear that tightens your chest, the heaviness that sits in your stomach. These are clues. If you feel relief at the thought of waiting, look again. Is it relief from a genuine danger, or relief from the discomfort of change? If you feel dread at the thought of choosing, ask what you're really afraid of: loss, exposure, failure, or the death of infinite possibility. The violence of inaction is not measured in ruined plans or shattered hopes. It is measured in the slow erosion of vitality, the gradual fading of courage, the quiet betrayal of your own longing. To do nothing is sometimes the most violent act because it denies the truth of who you are, a being born to move, to act, to risk, to change. Life is not lived by accident. It is shaped, moment by moment, by the willingness to step forward, even when the outcome is unclear. Let the paradox remain. Now that you know action creates regret, what if inaction destroys even more? There is no easy answer, no rule to follow, no formula for choosing. There is only the knowledge that every moment is a crossroads, every breath a chance to become more alive or more absent. The choice is yours whether you make it or not. Now, as you face the accumulating cost of inaction, another riddle waits. If progress only multiplies uncertainty, if every step forward breeds new doubt, what is the true nature of growth? Next, we enter the paradox of ambition and ask, if achievement multiplies anxiety, is growth a curse disguised as ambition? If achievement multiplies anxiety, is growth a curse disguised as ambition? You're told that life is a ladder, and every rung brings you closer to satisfaction. You move forward, driven by the quiet engine of ambition, believing that progress is the answer to longing, that each success will silence the gnawing voice of not enough. But as you climb, a subtle reversal unfolds. The air does not grow clearer, the mind does not settle. Each step gained becomes a new vantage point from which to glimpse another, higher, brighter summit. With every victory comes a sharper awareness of what remains undone, of goals deferred, of doubts multiplied. This is the paradox of progress. Growth is worshipped as a universal good. The self-improvement industry thrives on the promise that with enough effort, enough discipline, you will finally arrive, complete, confident, unburdened by uncertainty. But reality is more cunning. Each time you expand your world, the edge of the unknown grows with you. New skills reveal new deficiencies. A promotion exposes you to higher stakes and more ways to fail. More money, more choices, more responsibility. All bring not just freedom, but a swelling tide of fresh anxieties. The mind, restless and creative, adapts instantly to new levels of achievement. What once seemed impossible becomes the new baseline, and satisfaction is postponed to the next goal and the next. The ambition that drove you becomes a curse, fueling a cycle of striving and second-guessing, always hungering for more. The bar is raised. The heart is never full. The joy of arrival flickers, then is gone, replaced by the new ache of possibility. You notice it in small things, a fitness milestone reached, but now the body feels inadequate in new ways. A creative work finished, but suddenly you see only its flaws. A relationship deepened, but now you fear what could be lost. Progress, far from soothing uncertainty, multiplies it. Each step forward brings you into contact with more complexity, more unknowns, more risk. The world offers endless proof of this curse. The more you know, the more you realize you do not know. The more you have, the more you can lose. The higher you rise, the further you can fall. Growth demands new decisions, each one loaded with higher stakes, more visibility, more potential for regret. The shadow of possibility grows longer with every gain. Why does achievement breed anxiety rather than peace? Because the self is not a stable entity, but a moving frontier, a living contradiction. You are not content to rest at any plateau. The hunger for growth is not only cultural, but biological, an echo of the ancient need to adapt, to outpace threat, to find advantage. But in the modern world, this drive no longer guarantees safety or belonging. Instead, it fuels a perpetual sense of inadequacy, a race without finish, a life spent chasing an ever-receding horizon. Ambition, for all its fire, can become a form of self-torture. A belief that if only you accomplish enough, earn enough, improve enough, the anxiety will finally subside. But every milestone reached is also a door to new uncertainty, new responsibility, new doubt. The mind, expert at identifying danger, shifts its focus from survival to optimization, from sufficiency to perfection. The result is a soul trapped in the paradox of progress. Every gain breeds a new loss, every achievement a new fear. But is growth always a curse? Is ambition truly the villain? The answer is subtler than resignation. The problem is not the drive to become more, but the belief that arrival will bring lasting peace. Satisfaction is never found in arrival, but in the rhythm of movement, the willingness to inhabit the present fully, even as you stretch beyond it. Growth is not a curse when it is understood as process, not destination, as an unfolding, not a finish line. The anxiety that shadows achievement is a signal, not a verdict. It asks you to pause, to notice, to honor the edge of the unknown rather than race past it. Doubt is not a flaw, but a companion, evidence that you are alive, awake, unfinished. The curse of progress is not the presence of fear, but the refusal to be present with what is here and now. Let yourself question the script of endless improvement. What if growth is not about eliminating doubt, but about expanding your capacity to live with it? What if ambition, at its best, is not a hunger for more, but a devotion to becoming? Every new doubt is a sign that you have stepped beyond your former self, that you are risking, learning, waking up to the complexity of your own existence. The paradox remains. If achievement multiplies anxiety, is growth a curse disguised as ambition? The answer is not an end, but an opening, a chance to redefine success, to welcome uncertainty as part of the journey, to rest in the knowledge that the horizon will always recede. The fullness of life is found not in completion, but in participation. Not in mastery, but in wonder. Not in certainty, but in the willingness to move forward, trembling and awake. Rest here on the moving edge, neither fleeing doubt nor bowing to it. Let each step forward be both a question and an answer. Let growth be an invitation to become more alive, not more secure. The true reward of ambition is not peace, but depth. A capacity to dwell within the paradox, to welcome anxiety as a sign that you have dared, that you have lived, that you have pressed up against the impossible. Now, as doubt grows with every achievement, another riddle emerges. If your future self is always watching, always judging, who is truly living your life? Next, we untangle the knots of time and identity, asking, if your future self judges your present, who is actually living your life? If your future self judges your present, who is actually living your life? You walk through your days with an audience. Not of strangers, not of peers, but of someone much more intimate, your own future self. Every choice you make, every word you speak, every indulgence or discipline or risk or retreat, you sense their gaze. Sometimes the future self is a judge, glaring from the end of the timeline, tallying mistakes and missed opportunities. Other times, it is a benevolent ghost, urging you to endure discomfort for tomorrow's peace. Either way, the present is not your own. You live not for now, but for the eyes that will look back and measure what you did. This strange relationship with time shapes everything. The future looms as both threat and promise. Each temptation resisted, each sacrifice made, is justified by the imagined gratitude of your future self. You'll thank me later, you whisper, postponing pleasure, enduring pain, trusting that the version of you down the line will see the sense in today's restraint. Sometimes you are right, but often the reward never comes, or the self you become barely resembles the self you imagined. You try to outrun regret, anticipating the criticisms of your older self, making choices not out of joy, but out of fear that you will be judged, not just by the world, but by the witness you can never escape. In this tangle of time, life becomes a performance for a panel of one. The line between present and future blurs. You are both actor and audience, executor and examiner, living a life that always belongs to another moment. The paradox intensifies. You cannot know your future self. The person who will inhabit your body years from now will be shaped by experience you cannot yet imagine, desires you cannot yet name, traumas and joys that are still hidden on the path ahead. You make plans, set goals, chart a course for the you hope to become, but time is a trickster. The future is not a destination, but a moving target, receding as you approach, changing shape the closer you get. And yet, the power of the future self is undeniable. The threat of their disappointment shapes your actions now. You save money, hoping for their approval. You endure hardship, imagining their gratitude. You swallow words you want to say, take jobs you don't want, leave relationships that still have fire, all for the sake of a self whose values are only guesses and projections. Your life becomes a kind of hedge, every risk and every avoidance weighed against the unknowable judgment that waits in the years ahead. But is this a form of wisdom or a trap? Does living for your future self liberate you or imprison you? There is virtue in foresight, in planning, in caring for the consequences of today's actions. Civilization depends on this capacity. But when the scales tip too far, the present shrinks to a hallway, the future swells into a tyrant, and the only thing you truly experience is anxiety. The present self is sacrificed for a vision that may never arrive, a witness that may never approve. This is the tangle. Who is living your life? The you who feels, breathes, aches, laughs in this moment, or the you who waits in judgment, unseen, always ahead, always out of reach? You seek approval from someone you will never fully meet. The present self is asked to bear the weight of choices it did not make, sacrifices it did not consent to, hopes it cannot truly own. The future self, for all its power, is an illusion, an ever-changing idea, a flicker on the horizon, a possibility that shapes reality by refusing to arrive. The trap becomes clear. You miss the only moment that is real now by giving it away to a future that cannot be possessed. The regret you try to prevent becomes the regret of having missed your own life. The self fractures along the line of time, one part forever chasing, the other forever being chased. You are haunted not by the ghosts of the past, but by the ghosts of the yet to come. But there is a deeper paradox. The future self is not only judge, but prisoner. It can only exist because of what you do now. Its pleasures, its wisdom, its memories are all born in the present, shaped by choices you dare to make or refuse to make. You are both the sculptor and the stone, shaping a figure whose gaze both commands and pleads. The judgment is never final. The trial is never over. Every present becomes the past of a new present. Every future collapses into now, and the cycle repeats. How can you live inside this tangle without losing yourself? The answer is not to banish the future self, nor to live with reckless abandon, but to recognize the limits of foresight and the necessity of presence. Let the future self advise, but do not let it rule. Let the present self feel, risk, savor, choose, even when it risks future disapproval. Wisdom lives at the intersection. To honor tomorrow without abandoning today, to plan without becoming a servant, to live with both memory and anticipation, but not at their mercy. Let the paradox stand. If your future self judges your present, who is actually living your life? The answer is unresolved, and rightly so. You are both now and later, both judge and judged, both the actor and the witness. The only certainty is that time moves, and you move with it, always arriving, never done. Now, as the threads of identity fray across the fabric of time, a new paradox forms. If each choice you make splits you into more versions of yourself, multiplying with every decision, can you ever become whole again? Next, we follow the fractal trail of identity and ask, now that choices multiply selves, can you ever merge back into one coherent identity? Now that choices multiply selves, can you ever merge back into one coherent identity? Every choice splits the self. With each fork in the road, another version of you emerges, walking a path you did not choose. The world tells you to become yourself, as if identity is a destination, a single, unified place where all contradictions dissolve and you are finally whole. But what if that wholeness is a myth? What if every decision, every hesitation, every regret or act of courage creates a new fracture in the glass? A new self living just beyond the reach of the one you know. You feel this fragmentation not as a theory, but as a daily experience. There are mornings when you wake up haunted by the person you could have been. More fearless, more honest, more wild, more at peace. There are nights when the voices in your mind multiply. One part longing to stay, another aching to leave. One side desperate for approval, another ready to burn bridges. One self holding the past, another yearning for the future. These are not just moods, but living shadows, echoes of all the choices you have made and all the ones you have not. The mind, desperate for order, tells a story to unite these fragments. It stitches together memories, roles, desires, failures, and hopes into a single narrative. This is who I am, you say, collecting the shards into a mosaic you hope will pass for a mirror. But underneath, the fractures persist. The narrative bends to fit the moment. Confident at work, gentle with family, wild with friends, uncertain alone. The selves multiply, and the performance shifts to match. Quantum theory gives this fragmentation a haunting metaphor. At every moment of decision, reality itself branches, universes split, futures diverge, versions of you spin off into parallel worlds, each living out a different consequence of the choice you made or did not make. The one you know is only one thread among infinite others, each as real to its own version as you are to yourself. The comfort of a single identity dissolves into a fractal web, a shimmering field of potential selves. You try to ignore the split, to focus on the life before you, but the echoes persist. Sometimes it is a memory of a road not taken, the shadow of an old dream. Sometimes it is the discomfort you feel when your actions do not match your ideals, or when you catch yourself saying one thing and believing another. The selves tug at you, each with its own longing, its own regrets, its own unfinished story. Is it possible to merge back into one coherent identity? The promise of self-integration is seductive. A final homecoming, a reunion of all the lost parts, a peace that comes from being finally, fully known. Therapists and philosophers alike speak of healing the split, finding the true self, unifying the fragments into a single, harmonious whole. But is this unity real, or is it another story? A wish for simplicity in a world that thrives on complexity. The truth is messier, richer, harder to hold. You are not a single thing, but a chorus, a constellation of selves, each shaped by choice, chance, and circumstance. Some voices grow louder, others fade, but all remain part of the song. The task is not to silence the others, but to listen for their wisdom, to honor their fears and desires, to learn what each part has to teach. Integration is not erasure. It is dialogue, a gathering at the table of the self. Still, the longing for coherence remains. The desire to be one thing, to stand unfractured before the world, is powerful. It is the source of your greatest ambitions, and your deepest shame when you cannot achieve it. The moments when the selves align, when desire and action and story sing in harmony, are rare and precious. But they are fleeting and the discord returns. What does it mean to be whole? Perhaps it is to accept the split, to recognize that multiplicity is not a flaw but a feature. A sign that you are alive, responsive, adaptable, complex. The fractured self is also a creative self capable of transformation, of surviving contradiction, of holding more than one truth at a time. Wholeness is not a final state, but a practice, a willingness to gather the fragments, to bless the wounds, to weave a tapestry from the threads you hold. You are the result of 1,000 collisions and 1,000 acts of care, of every choice made and every one avoided. The selves that survive are not ghosts, but ancestors, living inside you, shaping your days, calling you to remember who you have been and imagine who you might still become. The split is not the end of the story. It is the source of new beginnings. Let the paradox remain. Now that choices multiply selves, can you ever merge back into one coherent identity? The answer is neither yes nor no, but an invitation to live as a gathering, to move between selves with compassion, to let the music of your life be richer for its many voices. Now, as the chorus of yourselves rises and falls, a final, deeper paradox waits. If true freedom means letting go of all the lives you cannot live, is it possible to accept loss as the price of liberation? Next, we search for the meaning of regretless choice. If liberation requires letting go of infinity, can you ever be free while clinging to possibility? If liberation requires letting go of infinity, can you ever be free while clinging to possibility? You have spent a lifetime chasing freedom. You believed it lived in the open road, the unscripted future, the refusal to choose, the hunger for more. You held on tightly to possibility, guarding every door, leaving no path fully abandoned. In a world obsessed with potential, you've been taught that regret is failure, that to live without regret is to have chosen perfectly, to have lost nothing, to have found the singular path where every dream survives. But the deeper you go, the more this vision fractures. Freedom begins to taste like anxiety, possibility like a burden. The mind, drunk on the promise of infinite futures, reels from the weight of all it must hold. The more you try to keep your options open, the more you fear the collapse of the wave, the irrevocable act, the door closing, the selves left behind. Every choice becomes a threat, every commitment a kind of death. You wonder, is true freedom really the absence of loss, or something altogether stranger? Loss is woven into the very fabric of freedom. To choose is to narrow the field, to become one thing and not another, to step through a single doorway and leave the rest behind. Every yes is 1,000 no's. Regret is not an aberration but a shadow that walks alongside agency, a cost paid in the currency of the possible. The paradox is brutal. The more you try to avoid loss, the more imprisoned you become by possibility. The more you chase the illusion of regretless living, the less alive you actually feel. Consider the act of choosing with the delayed choice switch, the quantum paradox that allows you to wait, to keep reality undecided until the last instant. It is seductive, the promise of holding on, keeping every universe open, never paying the price. But even here, the act of measurement, of attention, of collapse is inevitable. Reality demands decision. Infinity cannot be held forever. The wave must fall, the possible must become real, the self must become singular. To decide without regret, then, is not to choose perfectly but to choose fully. It is to stand at the crossroads, aware of what will be lost and say yes anyway. It is the courage to bear the wound of becoming, To look back on the closed doors not with bitterness but with blessing. The wrong choice may still ache, but it is a real ache. A mark of your agency, your willingness to let go, your refusal to remain trapped in the amber of indecision. The myth of regretless freedom dies hard. You are taught to chase more options, more time, more data, more certainty. But the freedom you long for is not found in abundance, but in the power to accept what is gone. Regret becomes a signal not of failure, but of depth. A sign that you were awake to the stakes, that you cared enough to mourn the unlived life. To love possibility is beautiful. To accept loss is necessary. Yet the terror persists. The mind clings to the counterfactual, endlessly replaying what might have been, imagining that somewhere, out there, another self chose better, suffered less, found a perfect fit. Regret feeds the fantasy that you could have done otherwise, that freedom means escaping the price. But to be alive is to pay, to grieve, to commit, to bless both what is gained and what is lost. Is it possible to be free while clinging to possibility? The evidence of the heart says no. The cost of freedom is loss. The price of agency is the ache of what cannot be reclaimed. The paradox is not meant to be solved, but to be lived. Freedom is not the absence of regret, but the presence of acceptance. It is the gentle act of closing a door and letting the echo of the unlived life become part of the song, not a shackle on your ankle. To decide without regret is to bow to the mystery, to trust that what you have chosen is enough, that what is lost gives meaning to what remains. It is to find grace not in perfection, but in participation, in the willingness to let your life be shaped by both courage and consequence. The unlived lives become ancestors, not rivals. The paths you do not walk become part of your story, honored for the ways they shaped your choice, not resented for their absence. Let the paradox remain. If liberation requires letting go of infinity, can you ever be free while clinging to possibility? The answer is a lived experience, a moment-to-moment surrender, a willingness to let the ache of loss deepen your gratitude for the present. The door closes, the wave collapses, the self, wounded and whole, moves forward into the narrowing beam of now. And as you stand on the edge of this freedom, a freedom born of acceptance, not escape, a new riddle is waiting. If the power to choose without regret makes you a living paradox, can you embrace contradiction as your native state? Next, we bring the quantum switch to its ultimate test and ask, now that you hold the delayed choice in your hands, can you live with the contradiction you've become? Now that you hold the delayed choice in your hands, can you live with the contradiction you've become? All roads have led here. A threshold where your own nature flickers, impossible to pin down, impossible to reduce to a single unbroken thread. You stand with the quantum switch in your grasp, both empowered and unsettled. The promise of the delayed choice is no longer abstract. It lives within you, a hidden mechanism pulsing with potential. The power to hold open the doors of reality, to withhold collapse, to hover between worlds even as you move through life. But now the cost becomes visible. The freedom you have craved is inseparable from contradiction. Every attempt to finally decide, to fix your identity, to write a single triumphant narrative, only reveals new splits, deeper rifts, paradoxes nested inside paradoxes. You are both observer and participant, both certain and uncertain, both chooser and chosen. The quantum switch is not a tool that frees you from tension. It is an amplifier, a generator of new and stranger contradictions. You want to resolve the riddle, to become one thing, at peace with your decisions, unburdened by the ache of other lives not lived. Yet the very act of choosing, of collapsing the wave, leaves the paradox intact. The self who chooses is changed by the act of choosing. The outcome is known only after it has arrived. Until the moment of commitment, you are a field of selves, everyone alive and waiting, everyone shadowed by uncertainty. This is not failure. It is the heart of the quantum riddle. The delayed choice experiment in physics showed that reality does not settle until you demand an answer. And sometimes, even then, what emerges seems tailored to your act of asking. The universe appears to wait for you, to withhold its nature until you turn your attention upon it. Likewise, your own being resists closure, resists reduction, resists the comfort of a final answer. You do not merely live with paradox, you are paradox incarnate. The temptation to reject this, to force coherence, is overwhelming. You want to be understandable both to others and to yourself. You want to write a story that makes sense, to fit your life within the safe boundaries of logic and reason. But to force unity is to lose the richness of your experience, to flatten the depth and possibility of your own becoming. The cost of certainty is the death of wonder, the loss of awe. To embrace the quantum switch is to choose contradiction as your home. It means learning to rest in ambiguity, to welcome unresolved tension, to move through life without demanding that every answer be clear. It is the art of living on the threshold, at the edge of knowing and not knowing, at the seam where opposites meet. This is the ground where creativity flourishes, where love grows, where meaning emerges, not from the eradication of paradox, but from your willingness to inhabit it fully. You are a wave and a particle, a chooser and a chosen, both the sum of your decisions and the remainder left by every road not taken. You act with conviction, yet doubt is always present. You move forward, yet a part of you lingers at every fork, listening for the echo of unlived lives. The mind resists this truth, but the soul recognizes it. In the dance of contradiction, you find the freedom that eluded you in the chase for certainty. What does it mean to live as a paradox? It means owning your complexity. It means allowing the past to remain alive in memory, even as you commit to the present. It means accepting regret, not as a flaw, but as evidence of your depth. It means loving what you have lost, honoring the selves you cannot become, blessing the choices that wound as well as the ones that heal. The quantum switch is not a path out of uncertainty, but an invitation into deeper mystery. To hold it in your hands is to admit that you are both unfinished and complete, both wounded and healed, both agent and consequence. You do not have to choose once and for all. You are always choosing, always becoming, always remaking yourself in the presence of the unknown. This is the ultimate test, not to resolve the contradiction, but to bear it, to carry it with grace, to become the space where opposites can meet without destruction. To love yourself as paradox is to open to the fullness of being human. You are not broken because you cannot collapse your identity into one. You are alive because you can hold so many possibilities at once. Let the question linger, electric and unresolved. Now that you hold the delayed choice in your hands, can you live with the contradiction you've become? The answer is a practice, a discipline, a daily act of courage. It is the decision to stay with what cannot be resolved, to bless the ache, to trust that meaning emerges not from answers, but from presence. You are the paradox, both the light and the shadow, the longing and the loss, the question and the answer that will never quite arrive. And as you reach this precipice, trembling but awake, a final, deeper riddle appears, one that cannot be solved, only lived. If every chapter leaves a question open, if every truth is haunted by another, if certainty is forever a dream, what does it mean to live in a world that will never resolve? Next, we meet the ultimate cliffhanger, the impossible question. After everything you've seen, can you finally live with the unanswerable, or will you spend forever searching for certainty in a quantum universe? After everything you've seen, can you finally live with the unanswerable, or will you spend forever searching for certainty in a quantum universe? You've traveled through corridors of possibility, doors that vanished the moment you opened them, wounds that ached even when they were imagined, and shadows that whispered secrets you were never quite ready to hear. Each paradox cracked open a new room of the mind, familiar but always out of reach. With every chapter, you hoped the riddle would resolve. You sought an answer that would tie the quantum knot of your life, a final word that would banish the ache of uncertainty. Yet here, at the edge of knowing, the final question is the one that cannot be answered. Everywhere you look, the universe hums with ambiguity. Light is both wave and particle. Time runs forward and backward, meaning shifts with every observer, and the rules themselves seem to hesitate, waiting for you to decide. You wanted certainty, a solid ground to build your life upon. But the deeper you searched, the more the ground dissolved, replaced by clouds of probability, branching realities, and the soft, perpetual movement of becoming. The mind recoils from this. It was built for resolution. The stories you tell yourself, the goals you chase, the explanations you invent, all serve the longing to make sense of the world, to tame the chaos, to place a period where there is only ever a question mark. But every answer breeds another question. Every solution splits into more problems. Every certainty is haunted by the specter of what you do not and cannot know. You have been trained to seek closure, to believe that peace waits at the end of the search. One day, it will all make sense. You whisper, bargaining with time, with fate, with your own longing. But the quantum world mocks this dream. It reveals a universe that is not an answer, but a question. An open system, eternally incomplete, never settling, always becoming. The rules change the moment you look. The truth is not a fixed point, but a dance at the edge of what can be known. The impossible question lingers, insistent as a heartbeat. What if the only way out is through? What if the only life worth living is the one lived inside the riddle, not beyond it? Can you surrender the fantasy of certainty, the comfort of closure, and let the ache of the unanswerable become your companion? You stand at the border of mystery. Every part of you wants to turn back, to find a smaller, safer world. But the hunger for certainty is what keeps you running in circles, forever searching, forever disappointed. The riddle will not yield. There is no final truth, no last insight, no perfect decision that makes the ache disappear. What there is, instead, is this, the invitation to rest in the question, to let possibility remain open, to trust that meaning is made not by closure, but by participation. What would it be to live with the unanswerable? It is to walk each day with eyes open to wonder, to meet contradiction with curiosity instead of fear. It is to allow your regrets to be real and your dreams to be unfinished. It is to hold the ghosts of your unlived lives close, blessing them for the depth they bring, even as you let them remain shadows. It is to accept that you are both particle and wave, both chooser and chosen, both whole and fractured, both the question and the questioner. There is no map for this territory, no checklist, no guarantee, no finish line. The only guide is the willingness to stay awake, to keep asking, to refuse the easy comfort of certainty. Wisdom lives not at the end of the road, but along its winding, impossible length. Freedom is found not in escaping the paradox, but in loving it, tending to it as you would a garden, letting each new question lead you deeper into the wild. You are not alone in this. Everyone you meet carries their own impossible questions. Behind every certainty is a trembling doubt. Behind every confident face, a hidden confusion. The great mistake is to believe that you are the only one lost in the maze. The truth is that the maze is home. The riddle is the price and the privilege of consciousness, the mark of your participation in the living universe. So let the impossible question remain. Let it haunt and heal you. Let it call you forward, not to closure, but to engagement. Every day you will face choices you cannot fully understand. Every day you will wonder if you chose rightly. Every day you will live with the ache of what you cannot know. And every day you can choose to meet that ache with presence, with love, with the quiet courage that refuses to give up on meaning, even when meaning refuses to be pinned down. Perhaps there is a deeper answer, one that hides in plain sight. The only way out is through the confusion, through the longing, through the ache of unmade choices and unlived lives, through the dazzling, terrifying openness of a quantum universe that will never resolve. You are the answer even as you remain the question. The series ends, not with certainty, but with an opening, a door that never closes, a mystery that never settles, a universe that waits for you to keep asking. There is no comfort here, but there is wonder. No resolution, but there is freedom. No final word, but there is the promise of more questions, more life, more becoming. So as you turn off this episode, as you return to the ordinary world with its ordinary doubts and desires, carry the impossible question with you. Let it unsettle your certainty, sharpen your curiosity, deepen your compassion, for yourself, for others, for the universe that is both your home and your riddle. After everything you've seen, can you finally live with the unanswerable? Or will you spend forever searching for certainty in a quantum universe? The story is unfinished. The question is yours.